If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 90 Power Plant Mayhem. Cynthia's sudden encounter with the hidden ambush from the electrode was naturally beyond everyone's expectations, marking yet another unexpected twist in her power plant exploration. After the battle ended, following a brief moment of consideration, Cynthia ultimately decided to leave the power plant temporarily to restore her defeated Polyper's health and condition at the Pokémon Center. The reason was simple. Although the lighting equipment in this area of the power plant allowed Cynthia to barely make out the path ahead without needing Ludicolo to use flash anymore, her instincts told her that a significant battle was waiting for her deeper in the power plant. Cynthia didn't believe that in this game's storyline, she would simply need to enter the power plant's depths as Watson suggested, casually fix some machine, and solve all these problems. Otherwise, it wouldn't match the style of this game Emerald. After 5 minutes of full-speed backtracking, Cynthia re-entered the power plant, standing at the position where she had just encountered the electrode, and pressed another button, successfully opening the door in front of her. What greeted her next was an even more intricate maze of power plant corridors. It seemed the previous doors were just a warm-up for Cynthia, helping her adapt to the situation here. As the complex pathways ahead of Cynthia unfolded, the viewers in the live stream were getting dizzy just watching. Is this place really this confusing? No wonder nobody comes for regular maintenance. Anyone who enters would probably get lost. That Watson guy, too, is calling the streamer for help without even providing a map. Is there a possibility that Watson was afraid of getting lost himself, which is why he sent the streamer? Haha, that old guy's got like 100 tricks up his sleeve. No wonder he's offering such good rewards. Meanwhile, facing the maze-like predicament before her, Cynthia frowned slightly, falling into thought and entering a serious state. After wandering in circles for a while, she had already discovered that she seemed to be walking the same route over and over. She couldn't continue exploring randomly like this anymore. The best approach was to use conspicuous landmarks around her, such as the power plant's equipment or the colors and positions of the doors. After entering this focused state, Cynthia's efficiency in finding her way forward improved considerably. She finally navigated out of the area most likely to make her lose her way. However, the situation inside the power plant suddenly began to feel off. As Cynthia ventured deeper, the previously relaxed BGM with slight metallic electronic tones suddenly began to turn somewhat ominous. Not only that, but Cynthia also keenly sensed that the atmosphere around her seemed somewhat wrong, giving her a vague sense of unease. While she was pondering this, she heard a click, and the lighting equipment that had been providing some dim illumination was suddenly shut off completely. What followed was the rumbling of machinery inside the power plant and the crackling sound of electrical currents. The air around her actually began to flicker with faint electrical sparks. Such an abnormal scene was clearly not right. But for now, she needed to figure out how to continue forward. Fortunately, after Ludicolo had lost its fighting ability earlier, Cynthia had decisively taken it to the Pokémon Center to restore its condition. At this moment, she naturally sent out Ludicolo to use Flash, once again illuminating the surrounding darkness. However, the scene that appeared before Cynthia in the next moment made her slightly stunned. Right in front of her was a Pokémon with 2 giant magnets for hands, a black and white body, floating in the air like a steel battle tank fortress. Countless electrical currents crackled across its body, emanating a powerful and terrifying aura. This was a Magnazone, the evolved form of Magnetron, requiring a metal coat to complete this final evolution, one of the most powerful species among electric-type Pokémon. But unlike ordinary Magnazone, this one had violent electrical currents flashing all over its body, and its large eyes were blood red. The moment it saw Cynthia, it unhesitatingly lunged directly at her. Amid tense battle music, a line of text suddenly appeared before Cynthia. A wild Magnazone appeared, LV58. Seeing this prompt, Cynthia couldn't help but widen her eyes again. Level 58. This was even higher than the electrode she'd just faced, far exceeding her team's current level cap. Even Victini, the newest addition to her team, was a full 10+ levels behind this Magnazone. Why would such a powerful wild Pokémon appear in this power plant? This was completely different from the outer areas. However, the current situation clearly didn't give Cynthia much time to think. The escape button in the lower right corner was even grayed out, meaning Cynthia had no option to flee, only battle. In that case, let's fight. Cynthia's gaze sharpened as she instantly entered battle mode, quickly analyzing how to deal with this Magnazone. If she remembered correctly, Magnazone was an electric/steel type Pokémon, and its specialty should be special attacks. In terms of type matchups, if she wanted to play defensively and counterattack, the best choice would undoubtedly be Ludicolo, since neither steel nor electric type moves could pose an effective threat to it. But she had to remember that her team included a Pokémon that resisted steel types, none other than Victini, who had just joined the team. Moreover, Victini's speed should exceed Magnazone's. Even with such a large level gap, it might still have the right to attack first. More importantly, with such a massive level difference, probably only Victini in her team could withstand one of Magnazone's attacks. With this thought, Cynthia immediately chose Victini as her lead Pokémon. Red light flashed, and its small orange figure appeared before Cynthia. Teeny. The previous battles with those electric-type Pokémon seemed to have built considerable confidence for Victini. At this moment, its face showed full excitement as it stared at the opposing Magnazone. Looking at this scene, Cynthia didn't panic too much. She had already anticipated that such a tough battle might occur. So when she returned to Movili City earlier, she had specifically purchased some supply items to ensure all her Pokémon were always in optimal condition, ready to face the arduous battles that might come next. Her full team of healthy Pokémon against one high-level Magnazone should be manageable. However, in the next moment, a golden electrical light instantly flashed across Magnazone's body. What followed was a prompt. Magnazone seems to have entered an electrical overload state. All its stats increased by 100%. Cynthia? Honestly, the moment she saw this prompt, Cynthia already began to regret having Victini face off against this Magnazone as her lead Pokémon. Originally, she had sent Victini out, hoping to use its type advantage to directly take out at least half of this guy's HP. But now whether Victini could even survive the first turn was probably a huge question mark. The viewers in the live stream, seeing this scene, all went crazy with their comments. What kind of godly buff is a 100% increase to all stats? Is this some kind of divine dance? So what's this electrical overload effect? Is this another special buff designed for this game? These numbers would make this at least a mini-boss in other games. Mini-boss? This is a full boss. While the live stream chat was buzzing with discussion, Cynthia's first turn had already begun. With no choice, she could only have Victini use the highest power Flare Blitz, hoping to gamble on the possibility of taking away more of the opponent's HP. But as she had predicted, after the stat doubling, the level 50-something Magnazone was clearly faster. In the next moment, as expected, it attacked first. Brilliant electrical light flashed across Magnazone's body, transforming into a thick lightning bolt that shot directly toward Victini. Magnazone used Thunderbolt. The next instant, as Victini was struck by the lightning, its HP bar immediately began plummeting rapidly. In a flash, it dropped to barely 1/3 red health remaining, finally stopping at what looked like less than 1/10, flickering with red light. Cynthia's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. This Magnazone, after receiving the all-stats doubled buff, was indeed abnormally powerful. Thank goodness the opponent had used Thunderbolt rather than Thunder, a high-power move. Otherwise, even with Victini's durability, it wouldn't have had even a sliver of health left. And in the next instant, Victini, recovering from the electrical shock, let out a small cry and wrapped itself in brilliant flames, charging directly toward Magnazone. Flare Blitz, a fire-type move with 120 base power, with the only side effect being 1/3 recoil damage to the user. There was a reason for using this move. Cynthia didn't think Victini could survive Magnazone's attacks for a second turn, so if it had the chance to attack, Flare Blitz was naturally the best choice. Brilliant firelight, accompanied by Victini's charging force, slammed hard into Magnazone's body with a dull impact. Super effective. Notification popped up. However, Magnazone's HP bar slowly decreased, stopping at just over half. Cynthia couldn't help but frown slightly. Victini's attack hadn't dealt the considerable damage she had imagined. That 100% stat boost was just too deadly. Without that buff, Magnazone would already be down to a sliver of health. At this moment, another notification appeared. Victini was damaged by the move's recoil. Flare Blitz's recoil effect triggered, directly taking away Victini's last bit of HP and causing it to faint. With Victini's defeat and entering the Pokémon switching interface, Cynthia realized how dire the situation was. Now she could confirm that if even Victini's speed couldn't outpace this Magnazone, then the other Pokémon in her team probably wouldn't have much chance either. Sceptile might have some possibility of outspeeding it and gaining the right to attack, but the problem was the same old issue from the electric gym facing an electric/steel type Pokémon. Sceptile was at a pure disadvantage, absolutely unable to take out Magnazone's remaining half health in one hit, and would still be one-shot. Looking at the other Pokémon in her team, they had no right to attack first, and judging from how even Victini, with its strong defensive stats, took such high damage, they absolutely had no possibility of surviving one of Magnazone's attacks. So what should she do now? While pondering, Cynthia seemed to find a ray of hope in this desperate situation. That was to send out Pelipper, let it faint while triggering the rain weather, then send out Ludicolo with Swift Swim to activate its ability effect, doubling its speed to achieve an outspeed against Magnazone and gain a precious turn to attack. And this turn would naturally be used for moves like Teeter Dance to restrict Magnazone, carefully looking for a chance to defeat this guy like fighting a boss. Without hesitation, Cynthia immediately sent out Pelipper, preparing to attempt the only possibility of victory she had found in this dire situation. However, at this moment, her battle interface suddenly flickered. The game returned to the power plant interface from before. At this moment, right in front of Cynthia stood that Magnazone with electrical currents crackling all over its body and red eyes. Just as Cynthia was still somewhat confused about what had happened. From the darkness not far away, pairs of blood-red eyes suddenly lit up, accompanied by intense electrical currents. Those were clearly more electric-type Pokémon. Besides two more Magnazone, there was also an Electivire and a Reishu. Besides all being electric types, they shared another common trait like the first Magnazone. They were all enveloped in powerful electrical currents, emanating a terrifying sense of pressure and aura. Line after line of notifications began appearing continuously before Cynthia. A wild Reishu appeared, LV52. A wild Electivire appeared, LV54. A wild Magnazone appeared, LV51. As the electrical light flashed, Cynthia's expression immediately stiffened. If it were just that one Magnazone, she could still think of ways to deal with it. But with so many high-level electric-type Pokémon surrounding her, this situation was not looking good at all. Chapter 92, The Golden Flash to the Rescue. Faced with this situation, only one solution came to Cynthia's mind run. She didn't hesitate to control her character to turn around and flee in the direction she came from. However, in the next instant, she stopped her actions. Because in the darkness from where she had just come, several more pairs of blood-red eyes lit up. Cynthia couldn't help but frown deeply. What on earth was going on? Why would so many high-level, dangerous Pokémon suddenly appear in this power plant? And their condition was the same as that of Magnazone from before. Clearly something was wrong with them. But there was no time to ponder such questions now. With crazed electric-type Pokémon surrounding her from all directions, the situation had reached a point of no retreat. In the next moment, Cynthia's screen went black, triggering another cutscene. The camera angle descended from above into the depths of the power plant exactly where she was currently located. Within the encirclement of those crazed Pokémon, the surroundings had already become a hellscape of raging electrical currents. High-voltage arcs danced wildly in the air like uncontrolled serpents. Machine after machine was ignited and destroyed by the electrical currents. Piercing alarm sounds were drowned out by deafening thunder and the irrational roars of those electric-type Pokémon. The air seemed thick with an acrid burning smell, heavy with a sense of danger. The crazed electric-type Pokémon tightened their encirclement, their crimson eyes all focusing on Cynthia simultaneously. In the next moment, they all moved in unison. Wild, unrestrained electrical currents poured from their bodies, converging into a massive thunder dragon that illuminated the entire darkness. With a terrifying presence, it charged directly at Cynthia, leaving her with nowhere to escape. At this moment, even sitting in front of her screen, Cynthia felt her heart sink, her pupils contracting sharply. She felt that bone-chilling sensation unique to mortal threats, and even her breathing stopped for an instant. However, at this critical moment, a golden lightning bolt far more brilliant than any surrounding electrical current, like sunlight tearing through the night, struck down from the darkness without warning. Its speed exceeded even the limits of vision. Though striking later, it arrived first, striking with pinpoint precision between Cynthia and that deadly thunder dragon. Boom! Amid the deafening explosion, shockwaves from the collision of pure energy spread outward, and that raging thunder dragon was instantly annihilated. In the terrible aftermath of this impact, several Electivire at the front were struck by an invisible tremendous force, their massive bodies flying backward and crashing hard into a pile of destroyed equipment, sending sparks flying everywhere. This firelight illuminated a golden yellow figure. Through the smoke and scattered electrical sparks, that agile figure full of wild power had somehow appeared in front of Cynthia. This was yet another Pokémon that no one had ever heard of. Golden Fur stood on end in the lingering static electricity, covering streamlined muscles that contained explosive power. A golden mane danced like burning flames in the turbulent air currents, displaying kingly majesty. Those sharp amber eyes, keen as blades, now burned with cold fury as they swept across all the crazed electric-type Pokémon. Wherever that gaze fell, even the highest level, most dangerous raging Magnazone visibly cowered. A powerful, silent, terrifying pressure swept across the entire battlefield like a storm. This guy. In front of her screen, Cynthia's eyes instantly burst with incredible light. Feeling the aura and pressure emanating from before her, she was certain that this Pokémon was definitely at champion level or above. This incredibly powerful feeling. Could this be another legendary Pokémon? Just as shock filled her heart, she saw that golden figure disappear from its original position without any hesitation. Its movement completely transcended the concept of speed, more like spatial teleportation, leaving only a dissipating golden afterimage in place. Its true form had already appeared like a phantom before another Magnazone lunging toward Cynthia. Sizzle. No complex moves, just the most primal, direct release of power. That Pokémon's two claws, wreathed in high-voltage currents, carved two intersecting golden trails of death through the air, so fast that even afterimages could barely be caught. The sturdy steel body of that Magnazone shattered like paper before this claw strike, instantly crying out as it fell, unconscious and completely unable to battle. A one-hit KO. Roar. At the same time, from the shadows, a crazed Jolteon launched a sneak attack from the side of the battlefield. A brilliant and violent thunderbolt instantly reached that Pokémon's position. The latter, noticing this, didn't even fully turn around, just looked back and cast a cold glance at the incoming lightning. The next second, its powerful hind legs kicked off the ground forcefully, its body twisting and leaping at an incredible angle in mid-air. Not only did it perfectly dodge the thunderbolt, but using the rotational momentum, its tail covered in golden electrical currents and like a steel whip whistled through the air and struck hard against the Jolteon's waist. Thud. A dull impact sound rang out. The Jolteon flew out like a kite with a cut string, directly smashing through a row of steel railings. It didn't even have time to cry out before fainting. At this moment, all those originally crazed electric-type Pokémon simultaneously took a step back. This scene before them filled them with instinctual fear. Absolute domination. Absolute violent aesthetics. But even so, that golden Pokémon had no intention of letting them off. With another flash of lightning, it disappeared from its position again. It was like golden lightning dancing in a storm, weaving between that group of electric-type Pokémon. This encirclement that could have made other trainers despair seemed utterly powerless before it. All its actions carried an innate pride and composure. Its movements were clean and efficient, full of power and fluid beauty, without any hesitation. Darkness was repeatedly illuminated by golden electrical light. Each current that lit up, each flash was accompanied by another crazed electric-type Pokémon falling. In just a few breaths, the surging encirclement was torn open with a massive gap. The ground was littered with electric-type Pokémon that had lost their fighting ability. Even the acrid smell in the air seemed suppressed by its terrifying presence, returning to deathly silence. Seconds later, when the last standing Raisha was directly scared unconscious by the immense pressure, that yellow figure flashed and landed steadily not far in front of Cynthia, meeting her gaze. Looking at this figure before her that seemed forged from thunder itself, Cynthia suddenly felt somewhat dazed. As a champion, she had seen countless powerful Pokémon in her lifetime. However, since she started playing this game, every Pokémon she encountered here refreshed her understanding. Unlike the previous legendary Pokémon, this being was incredibly close to her, genuinely appearing before her and saving her. This feeling was completely different. After a brief moment of confusion, Cynthia snapped back to reality and immediately pressed the interaction button, preparing to say something. However, before she could utter a word of thanks, that golden figure transformed into a streak of light and disappeared from its position. Only Cynthia's character remained, standing there in a daze, gazing in the direction where that Pokémon had departed, not speaking for a long time. This Pokémon's sudden appearance and its performance in battle had clearly brought profound shock to her heart. She could be certain of one thing: this was absolutely one of the most powerful Pokémon she had ever witnessed in her lifetime. At this moment, after a brief silence, the chat comments in the live stream naturally exploded again. Holy crap, who was that guy just now? So cool. Could it be some new legendary Pokémon? Though it feels like it might not be as strong as those previous ones in the cutscenes, in terms of coolness, I'd crown it number 1. Looking for purchase links, everyone. I feel like if I can't get this Pokémon, I might just die. This mysterious Pokémon's dashing heroics didn't just conquer Cynthia, it clearly conquered the audience in the live stream as well. However, at this moment, some viewers seemed to suddenly realize something and began sending comments. Wait a minute, guys, why do I feel like this guy looks familiar? Like I've seen him somewhere before. Right, I remember now. I saw this Pokémon in Iono's live stream. Isn't this the one Iono's been looking for? Yes, yes. When I first saw him, I was thinking I'd seen him before, but he was just so cool that my brain got scrambled. Now I finally remember this is definitely a thing. Due to the large number of comments, Cynthia naturally quickly noticed their conversation. The Pokémon Iono was searching for? At this moment, her mind exploded with a thunderous realization. She recalled something important. On the forum she had just established today, that player called Electric Supreme who had provided her with information about Ultra Wormholes seemed to have mentioned that when they encountered an Ultra Wormhole in Little Root Town, they met a Pokémon that suddenly appeared from within the Ultra Wormhole. Now thinking carefully, the appearance and features of the Pokémon that person described were remarkably similar, even identical, to the one she had just encountered. Combined with this Pokémon's incredibly powerful strength and performance, Cynthia was even more certain that this must be the special Pokémon that person had mentioned. Only now did Cynthia understand that the first person to communicate with her on the game forum she'd established was none other than Iono, the electric-type gym leader from the Paldea region. Also, the player who had consistently maintained a top 3 position on the leaderboard for game progress. Cynthia really hadn't expected that her first interaction with this Paldea region electric-type gym leader would happen under such circumstances and conditions. But at this moment, her thoughts quickly returned to that Pokémon from earlier. No wonder Iono, an electric-type enthusiast, would be interested in this Pokémon. Not just her, even she, a trainer who normally didn't have much contact with electric-type Pokémon, couldn't help but be deeply attracted to that Pokémon. So was that guy a legendary Pokémon or an Ultra Beast? While pondering, Cynthia suddenly remembered something very important: the other party had stepped in to save her when she was in crisis. This meant it should be a Pokémon with a friendly attitude toward humans, right? According to Gladion's previous description, dangerous Ultra Beasts wouldn't show goodwill toward humans but would actively attack and directly tear humans apart. From this perspective, this guy should be a legendary Pokémon rather than an Ultra Beast. But then why would it appear from an Ultra Wormhole? While thinking, Cynthia looked up toward the direction where that mysterious Pokémon had departed. That seemed to be the direction of the power plant's core depths. Perhaps to unravel these mysteries, she should follow in that Pokémon's footsteps, find it again, and then be able to figure out more information. With this thought, Cynthia immediately made her decision to continue toward the power plant's depths. But just then, she suddenly realized a problem. The battle with that Magnazone earlier, though interrupted by the appearance of a group of raging Pokémon, had still caused real damage to her team. Victini had completely lost its fighting ability. This was currently the strongest and most important fighting force in her team. Her instincts told her that what she would face next might be even more dangerous than confronting that Magnazone earlier. That sense of crisis still lingered in her heart, not dissipating. So it would be best to return to Movili City's Pokémon Center to restore her team's condition. However, just as Cynthia was about to retrace her path, she suddenly discovered that the door she had already passed through was now firmly locked. Not only that, but the previous buttons had also completely malfunctioned, showing no response when stepped on. When Cynthia pressed the interaction key to investigate the large door, a game prompt appeared. Due to the raging electrical currents, the machinery seems to have malfunctioned. Continue forward to investigate the cause. Cynthia couldn't help but frown slightly. This game design was clearly intentional. She had probably entered some kind of story challenge, and more troublesome battles were waiting for her ahead. Not only that, but it seemed she no longer had the opportunity to return to the Pokémon Center for supplies. After brief consideration, she opened her bag interface and took out a small bottle of white powder. A prompt appeared before her. Special item, Revival Powder. Description: powder ground from a precious plant called Revival Herb. When used, it can restore a fainted Pokémon to 1/4 of its HP. This item was a special item Cynthia had found in a hidden location on an island she'd passed while using Surf earlier. And now it was finally time for it to be useful. Chapter 92 The Culprit Behind the Power Plant Rampage. When Cynthia first saw this item, her instincts told her it was probably quite valuable. After all, an item that could directly restore a Pokémon from a fainted state during battle or in the wild without a Pokémon Center was obviously very useful. Later events proved this was indeed the case. Cynthia hadn't seen this item anywhere else, this was her only one. So she had always treasured this item, planning not to use it unless absolutely necessary. And obviously, as she had just thought, now was the perfect time to use this thing. After brief consideration, she no longer hesitated and directly selected Victini to use this powder on. As the game character brought out Victini, holding it in her arms and feeding it the white powder, a brilliant light immediately appeared on Victini's body, transforming into green light particles that merged into its body. It awakened from its unconscious state, opening its eyes, and its HP bar successfully recovered to the 1/4 position. However, in the next moment, Victini seemed to convulse, flying directly out of Cynthia's arms, frowning and shaking its head while flying around in the air, appearing quite distressed. Teeny. Seeing Victini suddenly showing such abnormal behavior, Cynthia immediately became somewhat nervous. How could this happen? Did revival powder have some serious side effects? She immediately looked at the item description she had just used, and sure enough, quickly found a line of red text below. Please note, this powder is quite bitter. Pokémon will be unhappy after consuming it, which will somewhat decrease their friendship level. Quite bitter? Cynthia was stunned for a moment, then came to her senses and breathed a slight sigh of relief. So Victini was suffering from the bitter taste of the revival powder rather than having some other serious problem. But speaking of which, friendship level? What kind of mechanic was this? When checking her Pokémon's stats, she didn't seem to have seen this attribute. Could this be some hidden game mechanic? Cynthia understood that everything that appeared in this game had meaning. The creator would never randomly design useless things. But at this moment, she really couldn't figure out what this so-called friendship level was. At this moment, Victini returned to Cynthia's front, sticking out its tongue and going bleh 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 several times, then looking at Cynthia with pitiful big eyes, appearing very aggrieved. A prompt also appeared. Your Pokémon Victini's friendship with you has decreased. When friendship drops to a certain level, it will cause the Pokémon's stats to decrease and may result in the Pokémon not obeying commands during battle. Cynthia was stunned seeing this. That serious? But thinking about it, if the relationship between a trainer and Pokémon deteriorated in the real world, this kind of situation would probably be getting off lightly. She immediately input an interaction command, hugging Victini and petting it several times. I'm sorry, the situation is special right now. I've wronged you. Next time I'll try not to give you such bitter things. With Cynthia's comfort, Victini finally looked better, its face showing a smile again as it flew several circles around Cynthia. Teeny. Victini's friendship has been restored. Victini's friendship has increased. The viewers in the livestream found this scene quite amusing. This little guy is too easy to coax, oh my. I'm jealous that Cynthia can have such a well-behaved Pokémon. My little troublemaker won't even take medicine willingly. Strong, cute, and obedient. I can't take it anymore, guys. I'm going to the Hone region overnight to urgently check if there are any of these Pokémon on that mountain. Looking forward to your good news, person above. While the chat was buzzing with discussion, Cynthia was pondering another matter. She had just been wondering what friendship level was for, and unexpectedly got an answer immediately. Once the friendship between herself and her Pokémon was insufficient, it would produce some negative effects. So conversely, if the friendship between herself and her Pokémon was adequate, would there be some positive effects? As soon as this question arose in Cynthia's mind, she immediately recalled some things. For instance, when she was battling before, Trico had once unleashed the power of bonds, locking her HP bar and allowing her to get through the most difficult battle. Or in the gym battle with Norman, Sceptile had unleashed the power of its Mega Stone without Keystone support, successfully completing Mega Evolution. Perhaps this was the bonus that high friendship in this game provided between players and Pokémon? Only this game didn't display it directly, but quietly provided it to players through various methods. With this thought, Cynthia couldn't help but feel somewhat moved. Fortunately, when playing this game, she treated every Pokémon as her real Pokémon, carefully caring for, comforting, and supporting them. Otherwise, she'd probably still be stuck in front of Norman's gym. After thinking about the friendship matter, Cynthia glanced at her bag. As she had expected, the revival powder she'd just used had been consumed. And in her bag, there were no longer any items that could restore fainted Pokémon. She wondered if there would be opportunities to obtain this thing again? Cynthia sighed slightly, then looked toward the dark power plant corridor ahead, her gaze sharpening. These were all matters for later. For now, she should focus on the current situation. She was now getting deeper and deeper into the power plant, about to reach the central area. As the regrouped Cynthia set off again, she found the surroundings becoming increasingly strange. The electrical currents jumping and flickering in the air became more frequent and violent, while nearby machines all emitted strange rumbling and sounds. The surroundings seemed shrouded in a restless, eerie atmosphere. The lighting equipment overhead, restored by the violent electrical currents, also began flickering on and off, adding several degrees of eeriness to this atmosphere. Since departing from that previous location, Cynthia had remained vigilant, constantly monitoring the situation around her. She felt that dangerous Pokémon might very well appear in the depths of this power plant. But what happened next was beyond her expectations. After advancing for quite a distance, she saw no electric-type Pokémon whatsoever, and aside from the crackling sounds of electrical currents, there were no other movements. Only at this moment did Cynthia suddenly realize a problem. Those crazed Pokémon from earlier all seemed to have come from the direction of the power plant's depths. Initially, she thought they had come to surround her because they heard her sounds, but this idea seemed right yet not entirely correct. The correct part was that they had indeed attacked her upon discovering her presence. But the incorrect part was perhaps their unified movement toward the outside of the power plant had other reasons. So many powerful electric-type Pokémon appearing together in such an outer area already said it all. Electric-type Pokémon lived in power plants because they could survive by absorbing electrical currents dispersed by surrounding machinery. This was quite common knowledge. Generally speaking, the deeper into a power plant, the higher the probability of encountering high-level electric-type Pokémon. After all, that's where the electrical power was most abundant, and only powerful electric-type Pokémon had the qualification and right to enjoy this electricity. But those obviously strongest electric-type Pokémon in the entire power plant had all appeared in the outer areas, encountering her. So, could they have been fleeing? So, was there something in the depths of this power plant that frightened them? At this moment, Cynthia suddenly realized the severity of the problem. When she first saw that Magnazone, she seemed to notice that although dangerous light flashed in its eyes, it appeared somewhat panicked and fleeing. Only upon seeing her did it change attitude and launch an attack. Even before that mysterious electric-type Pokémon earlier, those dangerous, powerful electric-type Pokémon initially showed no signs of retreating. So what kind of terrifying existence had caused these guys to collectively flee from the power plant's depths? The more Cynthia thought about it, the more wrong it seemed, but there was no turning back once the arrow was shot. Even if she wanted to retreat now, it was too late. Moreover, Cynthia hadn't forgotten she was in a game. Even if she truly encountered danger, she should be able to restart from a save file. There was nothing to fear. But even so, with the oppressive BGM all around, the crackling electrical sounds, this dangerous atmospheric feeling still made her heartbeat involuntarily accelerate. The chat comments in the live stream had also decreased considerably at this moment. Obviously, everyone was in a tense mood, wanting to figure out what exactly was happening in the power plant's depths. And in this tense atmosphere, Cynthia's controlled character finally arrived before the large door at the power plant's deepest point. This was a steel door fully 5 meters high, and behind this door should be the power plant's most core location, where all the core machinery capable of generating large amounts of electricity was located. Speaking of which, the violent electrical currents in the surrounding air had become abnormally excited since earlier, even constantly flashing before her and blocking her path. Fortunately, Cynthia skillfully controlled her character to successfully avoid all those currents, finally standing before this steel door. And looking at this door before her, Cynthia already had an ominous feeling. Under the tense gaze of all viewers, she controlled her character and finally pushed open this heavy metal door. Accompanied by the rumbling sound of door hinges turning, the scene at the power plant's most core depths was revealed to everyone. This was a spacious area of over 100 square meters. At the very center of this space sat a giant generator unit dozens of meters high. Dense, thick cables coiled around the machinery like enormous webs, connecting and extending to dozens of machines in all directions. This was the most important power source for the entire power plant. All electricity in Movili City, and even partial electricity for several surrounding small cities, was normally supplied by this machine. At this moment, however, the several smaller generator sets around were plunged in silent darkness, receiving no electrical supply whatsoever. Instead, the giant generator in the middle continuously emitted deafening rumbling that made one's heart palpitate, seemingly already in an overloaded state. For a moment, machine rumbling, sharp and unstable electrical sounds filled this space, accompanied by wildly flickering lights that alternated between blindingly bright white and dangerously deep red, projecting the giant machine's shadow onto the walls. Even on Cynthia's screen, small, irregular electrical interference patterns had appeared. Looking at the scene before her, Cynthia couldn't help but frown. The situation here was far too abnormal. The machinery was clearly operating frantically, yet no electricity was being supplied outward, and the air was filled with dispersed electrical currents. This was no longer an anomaly that ordinary malfunction could cause. The current situation was as if this giant generator was being forcibly drained of energy by something. Just as Cynthia was pondering, her screen suddenly went black. The game's perspective was pushed toward the center of this space. There, at the core node where the giant generator's electrical currents converged, was an energy sphere radiating brilliant blue light. And at this moment, a scene that left everyone breathless was revealed before them. Because a colossal figure dozens of meters tall was standing majestically before the electrical energy core. It was like a giant composed of electrical currents, its massive body made of deep blue energy rings and cores emanating terrifying pressure that left everyone gasping for breath. At this moment, it had several arms made of pure electrical current deeply inserted into the energy core, greedily and frantically absorbing vast amounts of electricity. The light from the power plant's energy core visibly dimmed, its surface electrical currents becoming chaotic and fragmented. What followed were intense red lights accompanied by warning sounds echoing throughout the entire space. Looking at this horrifying scene, the same question arose in everyone's minds. Obviously, this was the culprit behind Movili City's power plant problems, the source of everything. But what exactly was this thing? Feeling that terrifying yet familiar aura, the viewers gradually came to their senses. Another legendary Pokémon? Was this power plant a conference room for legendary Pokémon? Were they all coming here for a meeting or what? Asterisk note: next chapter is free on Patreon. Chapter 93: Lighting Up the Night. The sudden appearance of this massive Pokémon sent the live chat into complete chaos. Cynthia stared at the figure before her, her mind racing through possible strategies. Before entering the depths of the power plant, she had anticipated various scenarios, but she never expected things to develop like this. The aura radiating from this enormous Pokémon proved one thing to Cynthia: it was definitely a legendary Pokémon. Moreover, its power level was no less than that of Regirock, the rock titan she'd encountered in the rock tunnel. If anything, it was even stronger. After all, that Regirock had been unconscious at the time, while this one was very much awake and alert. Clearly, it was absorbing power from the plant's core machinery, causing the electrical malfunction. So it must be an electric-type legendary Pokémon. Just as Cynthia was rapidly analyzing the situation, everything changed in an instant. The massive creature in front of the giant machine, this legendary Pokémon composed of pure electrical current, suddenly threw its head back and roared. The terrifying sound echoed throughout the entire space. It plunged its electrically formed arm even deeper into the machine's core, beginning to drain energy. Violent electrical currents instantly spread from the core toward its body, while the originally glowing energy core dimmed like a dying flame, growing weaker by the second. All the electricity in the power plant was being overloaded at this moment, forced to supply this massive Pokémon. Blinding red warning lights accompanied by malfunction alarms rang in Cynthia's ears. On a huge screen beside her, a series of warning indicators suddenly appeared. Warning: current machine operating efficiency at 109%. Please immediately shut down machine operation, or the machine will explode. As the massive energy core dimmed, countless power transmission pipes around the area began developing dense networks of cracks. These pipes were made from insulating and premium materials, virtually indestructible under normal circumstances. No amount of electrical load should cause this kind of damage. But now, they were carrying electrical loads far beyond their limits, showing clear signs of structural failure. Seeing this scene, Cynthia's heart sank as realization hit her. If before this, the power plant's malfunction would only affect the city's electrical grid, now the problem was far more serious. If this legendary Pokémon continued draining the core's electricity, keeping the entire system in an overloaded state, the power plant would face only one fate: a catastrophic explosion from the overloaded energy. When that happened, torrents of energy would surge outward from the power plant as the epicenter. Not only would the machinery and power plant be completely destroyed, but the buildings and people of Movili City would also be caught in the devastation. After all, this place really wasn't that far from Movili City's downtown area. If such a thing actually happened, it would undoubtedly be a devastating disaster. But now the problem was, Cynthia watched that godlike Pokémon in the distance, feeling its aura continue to climb as it absorbed more electrical current, her brow furrowed tightly. She knew very clearly that against such a powerful Pokémon, her own strength was completely inadequate. Forget about in the game, even if the real her brought actual Pokémon to battle such a being, she felt she wouldn't have even a slim chance of victory. After all, this was a genuine legendary existence. So what should she do now? She frowned deeply. At this moment, the surging violent electrical currents attracted Rotom from Cynthia's backpack. It emerged from its pokeball as a red flash, surveying the surrounding situation. When it spotted that massive Pokémon in the distance, it couldn't help but stare in terror with wide eyes. As a fellow electric-type Pokémon, it could clearly sense the terrifying electrical power contained within that golden giant form, power beyond its imagination. Rotom immediately darted behind Cynthia's head to hide. Who the heck is that guy, Roto? So scary, help me, boss. QAQ. Meanwhile, Cynthia's mind raced through strategies to handle the current situation. She suddenly thought of something, inputting interaction commands to open the game panel, trying to use the Pokeger to contact Lance and have him lead Movili City's NPCs in an evacuation. She also wanted to ask if there were any feasible solutions within the power plant under these circumstances. But next, she discovered that under the violent electromagnetic interference, the communicator couldn't reach the outside world at all. The rumbling of the overloaded machinery accompanied by red warning lights filled the entire space, growing more urgent and tense. A massive power conduit around the core could no longer withstand the pressure and burst, with surging electrical current pouring out into the space. Wherever the terrifying current passed, whether machinery or floor, everything turned to charcoal, releasing a thick burnt smell. And this was just a tiny bit of energy overflowing from a branch conduit. Cynthia looked at this scene and made her decision. No matter what, just standing there watching this thing destroy the entire power plant was something she couldn't do. She had to do something. Her gaze fell on the core machine in the center. If she could get close to that machine and find its switch to completely cut off the power plant's electricity, she could prevent what was about to happen. But how could she possibly approach the core machine's location under that powerful Pokémon's watch and cut the power? Not to mention that terrifying being, even the core area was flickering with dense, blinding electrical lights. With an ordinary human body, there was probably no way to get close. The current situation seemed to have reached a completely unsolvable impasse. Just as Cynthia's heart began to sink into despair, everything changed suddenly. A golden bolt of lightning suddenly tore through the dark space, transforming into a stream of light that struck directly at the massive figure. In comparison, this golden blue stream of light seemed insignificant before that enormous form, but the power and presence it unleashed was actually no less impressive than its opponent's intimidating aura. That's... Cynthia immediately noticed this development, her eyes sharpening as she watched that golden stream of light. This was the very same mysterious Pokémon that had just saved her. Bang! Crackle! Each of that Pokémon's attacks burst with brilliant gold and blue radiance and incredible electrical current, but under this surging offensive, the electrical giant's massive body only swayed slightly, seemingly unaffected. Its defensive power was astounding. The continuous attacks drew the giant's attention. A casual burst of high-voltage current from its body swept across like a sword of judgment, instantly forcing the high-speed moving golden light to retreat. The remaining electrical energy left a bottomless groove in the metal floor, showing just how terrifying the power it contained was. Meanwhile, the viewers in the live chat suddenly snapped back to attention. That's the Pokémon from before. It's helping the streamer protect the power plant. Even such a powerful Pokémon can't break through that giant's defenses? Just how strong is this thing? As the chat erupted in frantic discussion, back in the power plant. After dodging the electrical sweep, the golden Pokémon landed steadily, staring at the enormous figure before it. Its eyes showed no trace of fear, instead, it took a deep breath. The next moment, all the fur on its body suddenly stood up in the intense electrical current, and tremendous energy burst forth. It leaped several meters into the air, its form stretching into a bow loaded with thunderous power at the apex, right fist clenched tight. Violent ionic energy gathered and compressed frantically, blue-white electricity coiling around it with sharp crackling sounds, finally condensing into an almost solid, blazingly white sphere of terrible lightning that struck out with devastating force. This attack was completely different from its previous testing strikes. This looked like an all-out decisive blow. Before the punch even landed, that destructive electrical charge struck first with tremendous force, slamming hard into what seemed to be the smooth, unguarded center of the metal giant's torso. That appeared to be the electrical giant's only weak point and solid form. However, what followed wasn't an earth-shaking explosion or the sound of shattering metal. Only a dull impact that made hearts skip a beat, like something heavy falling into a swamp, all its force completely absorbed. Its pupils suddenly contracted, because it discovered that the violent plasma energy condensed on its fist, energy that could normally pierce through anything, was greedily and silently absorbed completely by the Titan's shell the instant it made contact. The expected scene of devastating destruction didn't occur. That massive metallic body didn't even show the slightest tremor, as if that lightning strike capable of tearing space was just a gentle breeze passing over a mountaintop, not even stirring up a few leaves. But that wasn't the end of it. On the surface of the giant's body, which was partly composed of pure electrical current, countless fine golden electrical lights suddenly blazed to life like living things, weaving through the air to form an incredibly complex, flowing net. This net directly enveloped the golden Pokémon's head, and golden electrical light began rapidly draining from its body. The electrical giant was absorbing its electrical power. The drained electrical light instantly merged into the net, becoming part of that energy field. The light at the giant's core suddenly blazed brighter, its intensity increasing several levels like an activated star, ruthlessly revealing the massive power gap between the two. The golden Pokémon realized the gravity of the situation. It let out a low roar, using all its strength to break free from the electrical current covering its body, crouching low with angry growls rumbling in its throat. At this moment, the electrical light that had been coiling around its striking claw was completely extinguished, leaving only a few wisps of unwilling smoke rising. Its golden beast eyes locked onto the giant that had returned to silent stillness, seemingly contemplating something. Meanwhile, Cynthia, watching from the sidelines, immediately understood what had happened. Though this golden Pokémon was powerful, as a fellow electric type, it seemed helpless before that massive metal giant. Could there really be such an insurmountable power gap between them? No, it probably wasn't like that. During the battle between the two Pokémon, Cynthia suddenly remembered something very important. When Iono had mentioned this Pokémon before, she'd said it seemed to be seriously injured, which was why its aura was so weak. Was the Pokémon she'd encountered in the same condition? Had it forced itself to act despite its injuries to stop that Pokémon from absorbing the power plant's electricity and bringing serious crisis to Movely City? Cynthia's gaze fell on the golden Pokémon. Sure enough, she detected subtle traces of weakness hidden beneath its strong aura, and this weakness was clearly increasing as the battle progressed. In that case, Cynthia quickly made her decision. If she wanted to stop the destruction of Movely City's power plant, there was only one path available right now, relying on this golden Pokémon. She directly controlled her character to rush toward the Pokémon while pressing the interaction key and inputting commands to throw all the best healing items she currently had to the golden Pokémon. Here. I'm here to help you. As Cynthia's voice rang out, the Pokémon suddenly turned around, its gaze falling on Cynthia with what seemed like surprise and amazement. The next moment, all the bottles and containers Cynthia had thrown landed in front of it, leaving it momentarily stunned again. But it quickly sensed that among these items before it were things containing considerable energy that it needed to replenish, energy that could even heal its injuries. In that instant, the Pokémon didn't hesitate. It dove forward and gathered all those items into its embrace. The next moment, deep green light burst from its arms, and energy filled with life force flickered across its body. In this game, the recovery effects of healing medicines on Pokémon were quite remarkable. However, Cynthia watched the Pokémon tensely at this moment. Because even while injured, this creature could display such tremendous power, it was undoubtedly a Pokémon of extremely high level. She couldn't be sure whether the ordinary healing items in the game would be effective against it. Sure enough, just as Cynthia had judged, when the deep green radiance faded from the Pokémon's body, its aura had recovered considerably, but there wasn't any particularly obvious improvement. Compared to the massive electrical giant in the distance, it was still far inferior. But even so, the moment its strength recovered, the Pokémon looked deeply at Cynthia, then once again transformed into crystal blue electrical light and charged at the golden giant without hesitation. Deep blue electrical light repeatedly struck the giant's surface. This time its attacks were much stronger than before, and even the giant's body began to tremble under the repeated energy bombardment, forced to stop absorbing electricity from the energy core. This time, its attacks seemed to have completely enraged the electrical giant. Dangerous red light flashed in its core, and with an earth-shaking roar, all the violent electrical current in the entire space suddenly froze as if time had stopped. And the next moment, the golden electrical currents scattered in the air instantly converged toward the giant, forming a golden electrical sphere several meters in diameter above its head, blazing with terrifying, blinding radiance. Like a meteor, it crashed down toward the golden Pokémon. Faced with such an overwhelmingly powerful attack, the latter showed no panic. Instead, it immediately made its decision. Speed was its advantage, and while this attack looked fierce and terrifying, avoiding it wouldn't be particularly difficult. But the next moment, it suddenly realized something and looked back. The golden electrical sphere wasn't falling toward itself, but was aimed directly at the human not far away, the one who had just given it the healing items. The electrical giant seemed to have noticed that human's interference and was very displeased with her actions. At this moment, Cynthia felt the massive shadow of death looming overhead, her breathing momentarily stopping. This was clearly just a scene her game character was facing, but everything now made her feel completely immersed, as if she were standing directly beneath that blazing electrical meteor. Sitting in her chair, she broke out in cold sweat all over, as if locked onto by death itself in the darkness. Even her hand holding the mouse couldn't move an inch. She had never experienced such a feeling. The viewers witnessing this scene also held their breath, some didn't even dare to watch what would happen next. The next instant, the golden meteor wrapped in violent electrical current fell from above. But a crimson figure suddenly flashed at Cynthia's waist, appearing in front of her. It was Victini. It let out an urgent cry, crimson flames accompanied by a powerful aura forming a barrier in front of Cynthia. But as the meteor-like golden electrical mass struck the barrier, countless cracks immediately appeared across its surface. The power gap between them was simply too vast, Victini couldn't possibly block such an attack. With a crisp shattering sound, the barrier broke apart. Teeny. Suffering backlash from its own energy, Victini cried out in pain and fell from the air. The electrical sphere continued its descent with undiminished force, breaking apart in the air and transforming into violent golden lightning that poured down like a waterfall. With such a terrifying attack range, dodging was already too late. The brilliant electrical light reflected on Cynthia's face as she instinctively closed her eyes. But the next moment, the expected impact never came. A battle-scarred golden-blue figure burst from the darkness at beyond limit speed, pushing Cynthia aside and standing before that lightning storm. It raised both claws crossed above it, and a pale blue translucent shield instantly deployed, barely blocking the golden lightning. Boom! Violent skill collision effects and sound exploded. The shield flickered intensely, holding for only an extremely brief moment before shattering completely. The remaining lightning energy mercilessly pierced through its body. Unlike the electrical giant, though it was also an electric-type Pokémon, it had no way to absorb and convert this violent energy, instead taking the full brunt of this terrifyingly powerful attack. Roar! A roar of ultimate agony rang out. The golden-blue Pokémon's body erupted with large patches of charred damage effects, its health bar appearing overhead showing only 1/3 remaining before instantly dropping to zero. Its figure was blasted away like a broken kite, crashing into a massive machine in the distance and sliding powerlessly to the ground. The electrical light that had been surrounding its body was completely extinguished, and the light in its eyes faded. It had completely lost its ability to battle. The tremendous shock of the scene before her left Cynthia momentarily forgetting to operate her character. She couldn't understand at all, why? Why had this Pokémon, after already saving her once, thrown itself forward again at this life-or-death moment to stand in front of her? She and this Pokémon had only met once. But why would it sacrifice so much for her, and even for Movili City? The live chat fell into complete silence. No one could have expected this golden Pokémon to risk its own safety to protect Cynthia at this moment. Meanwhile, the electrical giant's cold core contracted, seeming to look at the golden figure that had lost its fighting ability on the ground, as if confirming something. It didn't care about the results of its attack, as long as no one could interfere with its electrical absorption anymore. Having accomplished this, the electrical giant immediately turned its massive body around, once again plunging its electrical arm deep into the now nearly extinguished power plant core. It began draining the last of the energy even more frantically. The thunderous electrical light once again filled the entire power plant. All the lights in the machine room instantly went out, leaving only the piercing red warning lights spinning and flashing frantically, accompanied by cold female voice prompts. Warning! Core energy pile overloaded. The massive generator units made tooth-aching metallic twisting sounds. The sphere representing the core showed dense cracks on its surface, with red, blue, and white light flashing wildly and unstably. On a nearby shattered screen, huge red system warning boxes kept appearing and flashing. Warning! Core energy overload. Explosion imminent. Please immediately cut power. Explosion imminent. Please immediately cut power. Please immediately cut power. Seeing this scene, Cynthia's heart instantly sank to rock bottom. Before such a terrifying being, her own power was simply too small and helpless. The viewers in the live chat watching this scene also fell into heavy emotions. Somehow, an oppressive atmosphere was settling over their hearts. Because the scene before them truly made people feel despair. Cynthia listened to the thunderous warning sounds around her, feeling everything gradually becoming distant and fading before her eyes. Was this the insignificance of humans before legendary Pokémon? Even she couldn't stop any of this from happening, could she? No. Her gaze suddenly hardened, bursting with resolute and determined light. Her eyes fell on the massive machine in the distance and the electrical currents dancing in the air like silver snakes. She controlled her character and took a step forward. Even that Pokémon from before had dared to step forward for the people of Movili City and for herself. As a champion, could she choose to retreat at a moment like this? Absolutely not. She took a deep breath, quickly pressing the interaction key to release all her remaining Pokémon. Everyone, it's up to us now. With the red light of Pokeballs flashing, all of Cynthia's Pokémon appeared beside her, exactly 6. Sceptile, Ludicolo, Pelipper, Beware, Rotom, and the newest team member, Victini. All 6 Pokémon wore grave expressions. Whether they'd been outside or inside their Pokeballs, they all clearly understood the current situation and realized what kind of desperate circumstances they were in. Cynthia's gaze swept over them and she nodded slightly. Without saying much, she issued direct orders. Our target is the shutdown switch for the power plant's core machine. Beware and Victini will protect me. Sceptile, Ludicolo, Pelipper, and Rotom, you go distract that thing. Remember, protect yourselves and don't get hit. You don't need to deal high damage to it, just divert its attention and slow down its electrical absorption. This was the best solution Cynthia had devised for the current situation. The only option now was to push through the layers of electrical current, get close to the electrical giant's position, and shut off the core machine's power switch to prevent the machine from exploding due to overload. As for what happened after that, she'd think about it later. After Cynthia issued her orders, each Pokémon nodded slightly and scattered. Beware and Victini flanked Cynthia left and right as they ran toward the massive generator. Sceptile was the first to rush forward, leaping into the air and launching 2 energy spheres glowing with green light from both palms, accurately striking the lower portion of the massive figure. However, even that mysterious Pokémon from earlier couldn't deal substantial damage to this giant, so Sceptile's strength certainly couldn't accomplish it either. The energy spheres it released instantly melted into the surging electrical current and disappeared. Seeing this, Sceptile didn't get discouraged. Instead, it leaped up and continued charging toward the massive Pokémon. It understood clearly that for its trainer's sake, it had to do everything possible to draw the opponent's attention. Meanwhile, Ludicolo and Pelipper weren't to be outdone. With Pelipper's appearance, storm clouds remarkably formed overhead in this enclosed space, materializing into pattering raindrops that fell from above. This was the effect of the drizzle ability, creating rainy weather anywhere, under any conditions, through pure force of will, surpassing the basic laws of nature. Under the enhancement of this rainy weather, Ludicolo's movements became incredibly light as it quickly dodged across the power plant's charred, electrical current-covered floor, strange rhythms and dizzying sensations emanating from its body, the controlling move Teeter Dance. Having successfully activated rain weather to assist Ludicolo, Pelipper soared upward, continuously shooting several water pulses from its mouth, precisely striking the massive Pokémon. Ah! I'll fight you, Rotom. Rotom looked extremely nervous, but at this moment, it still gritted its teeth, closed its eyes, and released all the electrical current from its body with full force. Every single Pokémon in Cynthia's team was giving their absolute all at this moment, but the results weren't ideal. Whether it was Sceptile's energy spheres or Pelipper's water pulse attacks, when they entered that golden energy mass, they instantly vanished like drops in the ocean. Not only that, the electrical currents Rotom burst forth directly merged into that golden energy glow, seemingly making it shine even brighter. Seeing this scene, Rotom's expression immediately froze, its face collapsing as it shook frantically left and right. Oh no, Roto forgot this guy's body is made of electrical current. I just charged it up, Roto. The other Pokémon's attacks failed to attract the electrical giant's attention, but at this moment, the special rhythm emanating from Ludicolo's teeter dance managed to break through the level gap and catch the electrical giant's notice. Its core lowered, scanning over Ludicolo's swaying body. After a brief pause, countless electrical currents suddenly burst violently from its body, transforming into a sky full of golden rain falling toward the group of Pokémon on the ground. In an instant, the entire core area of the power plant was enveloped in golden electrical current. Beware beside Cynthia exerted all its strength, its fists igniting with brown flames as it punched again and again, solidly deflecting all the electrical currents approaching Cynthia. However, these currents were simply too powerful, even just the natural falling overflow was enough to quickly cause electrical paralysis effects to flicker across Beware's body. Victini continued flying rapidly around Cynthia, raising barrier after barrier of red flame to block the electrical attacks against her. With two Pokémon helping Cynthia, the other Pokémon weren't in such good shape. The dense electrical currents quickly struck them, the powerful electricity instantly draining their stamina. In moments, whether it was Sceptile, Pelipper, or Ludicolo, all of them collapsed in the electrical storm, losing their ability to battle. Watching this scene, the viewers felt a deep sense of despair welling up in their hearts. There was no helping it, the power gap between Cynthia's team and this creature was simply too vast. Forget about attracting this golden Pokémon's attention, the opponent didn't even need to look directly at Cynthia's Pokémon before they were all knocked down by stray electrical currents, unable to move. As for Cynthia's side, she'd barely made it a short distance before Beware collapsed from paralysis after helping her block electrical currents. Only Victini still seemed to have some energy left, but to reach that machine's location there were still dozens of meters to go. These dozens of meters stretched like an insurmountable chasm between Cynthia and that massive machine, making it impossible for her to ever reach it. At this moment, as the electrical giant's absorption speed increased, the frequency of the electrical light and red warning lights on the machine grew higher and higher, completely filling the entire space. The main power conduits around the area showed crack after crack, indicating they'd reached their limits. The mechanical, broken voice prompts repeated again and again, announcing the final moment's arrival. Warning! Machine overloaded. Explosion imminent. Warning! Machine overloaded. Explosion imminent. In this desperate situation, viewers in the live chat all gasped. However, many had already come to their senses. The atmosphere this game created was simply too tense, making them temporarily forget this was just a game. Since it was a game, like before, there would be opportunities to retry. But even with a second chance, in such dangerous circumstances, how exactly could this situation be resolved? Discussion comments began appearing continuously. So how exactly are you supposed to get through this part? I feel like it's completely impossible. Maybe the final result is that the power plant will definitely explode, and players just need to evacuate quickly after seeing those two Pokémon fight. But all the doors on the way in were shut off, how do you solve that? Don't know, but I think dealing with those doors would be much easier than dealing with this terrifying thing. While some viewers discussed ways to get through this part, others were thinking about different approaches. Do you think the way to get through this section might be like what our streamer did, helping that golden Pokémon recover its stamina? I think that's possible, but it seems like ordinary medicine doesn't work very well on it. She used so much earlier and it only recovered less than 1/4 of its health. Could it be that the grass idea flower from before is meant to be used at this moment? Didn't they say that thing could really help heal Pokémon injuries? Maybe the streamer should restart and try to get that flower first, then come to the power plant. Yeah, no matter what, there's no choice but to restart now anyway. Faced with this hopeless situation, all viewers unanimously agreed on one thing: this attempt had absolutely no possibility of success. As the live chat discussed, in the game, another thick, brilliant electrical current flashed before Cynthia. Victini flew forward, raising another red barrier to block the current. But as the cost, it was also struck by a stray electrical beam, instantly paralyzed and falling to the ground. Victini! Cynthia couldn't help crying out, controlling her game character to step forward and catch Victini. Just then, another violent electrical current condensed in the air, casting her figure in shadow about to completely devour Cynthia. Seeing this scene, many viewers in the live chat couldn't help but close their eyes, not wanting to watch anymore. In their eyes, Cynthia being able to get this far had already been doing her best. At least this time they'd gathered plenty of intelligence, whether about that special golden Pokémon or this terrifying electrical giant. But just as the live chat viewers were discussing and the red light on screen reached its peak, no one noticed that in a corner nearby, Victini and Cynthia's arms suddenly stopped moving. It looked at the other teammates in the distance, all paralyzed by electrical currents and collapsed on the ground. Then it looked at Cynthia, about to be consumed by the blinding warning red lights and electrical currents. At the moment when everyone was ready to give up, it seemed to sense that Pokémon's will to sacrifice itself to protect others, sense the despair of the power plant core's imminent collapse, and even more, sense the anxiety and unwillingness in Cynthia's heart. In Victini's deep black pupils, a flash of determination suddenly appeared. It closed its eyes, and when it opened them again, those black pupils had transformed into flame-like deep red. Teeny! With a cry full of power and determination, an unprecedented, powerful flame radiance suddenly burst forth from within Victini's body. This light instantly dispelled the paralyzing electrical currents on its body. Its small body floated upward, wings spread wide, pouring out all the infinite energy contained within without reservation. Crimson radiance continued flowing out like a brilliant sun, bursting with warm light filled with infinite power, illuminating the entire depths of the power plant. That brilliant light directly melted all the surging electrical currents in the air. At this moment, it was like brilliant daylight in the black night, igniting the darkness of the entire world. Chapter 94 Clash of Legends. The power plant's final showdown. As the torrent of blazing radiance erupted from Victini's body, everyone witnessing this scene couldn't help but widen their eyes in unison. The chat in the live stream also began scrolling frantically with comments. Did Victini just suddenly power up? What incredible strength and aura! I knew this little guy had to be hiding some amazing ability inside. Come on, Victini! But even so, can that golden giant really be defeated? I feel like this level of power isn't nearly enough. Yeah, that thing is just too strong. Some viewers in the live stream were naturally speaking the truth. While they could sense the powerful aura bursting from Victini's body at this moment, compared to the massive electrical giant not far away, the gap was still far too vast. At this moment, accompanied by Victini's cry, that crimson dazzling radiance condensed and burst forth from his small body, transforming into a blazing beam of light that shot toward the electrical giant. But the next moment, a scene that no one could have anticipated occurred. That beam, just as it was about to hit the electrical giant, suddenly veered in mid-air, shooting off in a completely different direction. And its final target wasn't the massive core machine, nor the electrical giant, but rather the golden Pokémon that had lost its fighting ability and was lying unconscious on the ground. This sudden turn of events left everyone momentarily stunned. What exactly was Victini doing? Why was he attacking that Pokémon? Had he lost control of his power and missed his target? Just as everyone was puzzling over this in their hearts, a flash of surprise suddenly crossed Cynthia's eyes. Ever since Victini had burst forth with that special power just now, she'd been feeling something was off. This feeling wasn't born from unease, but rather from a strange sensation because she sensed that the power Victini was releasing was completely different from the usual overwhelming force she felt from him. And at this moment, watching that streak of light fly toward the Pokémon on the ground, she finally understood why she'd had this feeling. Because that didn't seem like a destructive attack filled with intense destructive desire, but rather a supportive force brimming with warmth. Only when Pokémon used support-type moves, releasing power to assist their companions in battle, would it carry this kind of feeling. As a champion, she'd experienced countless double battles and had personally witnessed this many times in those countless encounters. However, such powerful and stunning supportive force was something she was seeing for the first time. So was he trying to help that Pokémon recover its strength? But even high-grade healing items hadn't been able to have much effect on that Pokémon. With the level gap between Victini and that Pokémon, could he really accomplish this? Just as Cynthia's heart was filled with anxiety and uncertainty. In this moment of absolute silence, with only the countdown to destruction beating like a heartbeat, that crimson stream of light had already made contact with the body of the Pokémon on the ground. A warm and mighty torrent of pink energy, like a comet streaking across the night sky, descended from above, ignoring all barriers and precisely infusing into that charred and broken form in the corner. Boom! Infinite waves of power suddenly erupted and swept through this space. The golden Pokémon enveloped by that radiance seemed to instantly undergo a sacred baptism. Its blackened, curled fur began rapidly healing and regenerating in the red glow, as if time was flowing in reverse. Every single golden blue hair regained vitality beyond what it had before, flowing with the dazzling luster of liquid lightning. Those massive, bloody wounds instantly closed up, and its muscle definition swelled under the energy infusion, filled with explosive power. All the damage it had suffered in the recent battle was miraculously restored in this moment. But this seemed to be just the beginning. The deep crimson radiance filled with infinite power continued pouring into its body, seemingly not content with mere healing. Like a blazing catalyst, it continuously awakened the surging thunder power within that Pokémon. As power kept flowing in, golden blue electrical light and warm fire light intertwined, coiled, and resonated in the air, forming around that Pokémon a sacred yet violent energy cloak woven from gold and red. This mass of energy was like a burning star, constantly radiating outward with shocking energy fluctuations, repelling all the surrounding dust and chaotic electrical currents, as if forming an absolute, untouchable energy domain. At the same time, that Pokémon's HP bar, which had been completely depleted at the top of its head, was instantly filled to maximum. Not only that, but above the health bar, a brand new HP bar woven from red and gold light condensed. Bzzz. A terrifying aura that surpassed its past limits, as if capable of tearing through the heavens, surged from its body like a substantial tsunami, instantly sweeping across the entire core area. This aura even briefly suppressed the electrical giant's destructive energy field, causing the frantically flashing warning lights to stutter for a moment. Roar! A roar that shook the entire digital world, like the first thunder at the creation of the universe, thundered forth. This roar no longer contained any trace of weakness or pain, only pure power and towering fury. The golden Pokémon's newly opened eyes had transformed into two blazing suns. Deep within its pupils, golden lightning and crimson flames of victory intertwined and spun, cold, sharp, piercing through everything, carrying infinite majesty as they locked onto the completely defenseless back of the electrical giant, where its core hub flickered. Unlike the metal rings it had attacked before, this was the only relatively vulnerable energy node on its massive body and the source from which it drew power. The abnormal revival of the golden Pokémon naturally caught the attention of the electrical giant. Its massive body jerked in surprise, and the frantically spinning core rings suddenly slowed down. Under the immense power radiating from behind, its originally cold and emotionless perception system finally detected that violent and furious energy source behind it that posed a real threat to its existence. An instinctive sense of threat and oppression instantly spread throughout the electrical giant's entire body. It withdrew countless electrical arms, turning around as the light from its core swept over the golden Pokémon's form, instinctively taking a defensive stance. But the next moment, it suddenly realized something was wrong. How could a powerful being like itself, a possessor of godlike power, feel fear in the presence of such a small Pokémon? Beyond its surprise, only infinite rage remained in its heart. It absolutely could not accept such a thing. From the electrical giant's core came a booming roar filled with infinite fury. It spread its golden arms wide, and infinite lightning instantly condensed from thin air in the dark ceiling above, suddenly crashing down. Boom 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 boom. This time, the lightning it unleashed wasn't the casual attacks from before. Its power had increased by who knows how many times. Each bolt was thick enough to have a diameter of over 6 feet, and when they struck the ground, they directly blasted away and destroyed the surface of the hard metal flooring, causing violent explosions and impacts. However, facing this overwhelming lightning storm, the golden Pokémon's figure moved. It vanished from its original position, leaving only a golden red afterimage. Space seemed to be completely crushed by the power it instantly unleashed, and a visible ring of sonic boom clouds mixed with electricity and flames exploded outward. The shockwave was like a tangible giant hammer, instantly blowing away, igniting, and reducing to ash the surrounding virtual metal debris and severed cables. Where the golden Pokémon had passed, only an energy vacuum depression caused by extreme speed remained briefly, along with countless scattered energy particles like stellar fragments. It didn't dodge the falling lightning. Instead, it charged straight at the massive electrical giant. Those countless falling thunderbolts simply vanished into thin air the moment they made contact with the powerful forces radiating from its path. Watching this scene, all the viewers in the live stream held their breath. This situation had undoubtedly completely reversed from the previous scenes. The electrical giant's full power attacks couldn't even scratch it. Didn't this mean it was now even stronger than the electrical giant? Meanwhile, the giant's core watched that lightning-like figure weaving through the thunder, and it too seemed to realize something was wrong. That intense feeling of oppression rose in its heart again, making its core tremble violently. It couldn't remember the last time it had felt this way since gaining consciousness. However, the electrical giant didn't have time to react further. That golden figure, which had been dozens of meters away just moments ago, suddenly disappeared. It had transcended the limitations of time and space, appearing in the blink of an eye above the massive electrical giant. This speed completely exceeded the limits of visual tracking. The game engine could only render a golden-red energy trail connecting the starting and ending points across the battlefield. Not only that, but the violent electrical currents all around fell silent in this moment, all transforming into pure golden radiance that was drawn and absorbed into its body. Roar! With an earth-shaking beast's roar. Its body completed an incredible extreme rotation in mid-air, compressing and concentrating all its strength, lightning's fury, and the will to victory into its right fist. Its right fist no longer seemed to be made of flesh and blood, but had transformed into a singularity that devoured all light. Blindingly bright golden-red ions, like billions of roaring thunder dragons forcibly bound and compressed, accompanied by terrifying sonic booms, surged and howled at its fist. Sensing that blazing and magnificent energy, the electrical giant's core hub flashed frantically with the highest level of danger warnings. The instinctive fear from deep within its soul had nearly crushed it completely. In this moment, it finally completed its difficult turning motion, hastily raising its massive golden arms, trying to condense the strongest electromagnetic barrier. Its remaining arms even plugged into its core, attempting to forcibly draw the last energy from behind for defense. Its core emitted a sharp, voice-breaking hum, and its massive body showed energy fluctuations that could only be described as panic for the first time. However, the golden figure didn't give the giant this opportunity. That punch, like the first ray of light from the universe's creation, ignored the electrical giant's hastily condensed weak electromagnetic barrier and struck with pinpoint accuracy and tremendous force right into the center of the giant's precisely operating golden core hub on its back. In this moment, heaven and earth fell silent. Pale and quiet radiance filled the entire world. Accompanied by that dazzling light, the entire game screen was instantly consumed by a field of absolute pure white. This light lasted for several seconds, as if time within the game had been frozen. Then, from within the brilliant white light, a blue light suddenly began expanding and manifesting. That was unmistakably the electrical giant, the energy core that had been directly struck by the golden figure's punch. Countless thick golden lightning bolts, violent deep blue ionic currents, and sacred red flames gushed frantically from that point. They were no longer chaotically surging, but under the golden Pokémon's power, they precisely flooded into every inch of the electrical giant's massive structure, carrying out complete destruction and annihilation from within. The blue metal rings that formed the giant's body, supposedly indestructible, began melting and cracking under the fusion energy's assault like ice thrown into lava, starting from the struck core hub. First came fine cracks, then they rapidly expanded into unbridgeable chasms, until finally the entire structure collapsed like quicksand. Massive fragments of energy rings glowing with blinding golden light, mixed with vaporized blue ions and scattered pink light particles, were swept up by the destructive ring-shaped shockwave from the explosion, forming a spectacular golden storm that filled the screen and left viewers breathless. Where the storm passed, the power plant's metal walls instantly melted into molten iron, and even the equipment beside the massive central generator was torn apart and hurled into the air by the tremendous force. In this moment, from the electrical giant's core, just as its structure completely disintegrated, came a sharp, distorted electronic shriek filled with terror and agony. Bzzzt cracked K. This sound pierced through the explosion's roar. Immediately after, its power source, the golden core at the center of its torso, suddenly filled with spider web-like cracks and, with a crisp shattering sound, completely exploded. The once invincible electrical giant, that massive golden body that had controlled lightning and devoured everything, completely fell apart in this moment. One particularly large golden core fragment, shining with the last traces of fading light, stood out prominently in the explosion's brilliance. Like a falling star, it was hurled toward the distant screen before finally being completely devoured and annihilated by the chaotic energy currents. Zeraora used plasma fists. It's super effective. Ragilaki fainted. A battle result notification box glowing with golden light appeared before Cynthia, announcing the outcome of this battle. However, at this moment, everything had not yet reached its conclusion. In this space that had been returned to silence by the massive battle, urgent and brilliant warning sounds once again rang out, accompanied by red light. Although the golden giant had stopped drawing electrical current from that core machine, the overload from just moments ago had obviously completely destroyed its circuitry. The energy core emitted an even deeper, more desperate hum. The broken warning voice echoed once more throughout this space. Warning! Machine about to explode! Warning! Machine about to explode! All personnel evacuate immediately! The entire power plant shook and trembled under this terrifying energy, and in the blinding red light, piercing electrical flashes began continuously lighting up from the core machine. Electrical current poured wildly from the core's cracks like the tentacles of a dying beast, lashing aimlessly at the surrounding air and metal structures. The shadow of destruction had not dissipated with the electrical giant's defeat, but had become even more imminent now that the original guide of the predator was gone. The core was about to explode. However, that golden Pokémon, upon noticing this scene, unhesitatingly vanished from its position again, appearing before that massive golden machine. It didn't burst forth with the reality-tearing extreme speed it had shown before, but instead took steady, powerful, and incredibly determined steps, walking step by step toward that frantically roaring energy core. With each step it took, the chaotic, scattered small electrical currents beneath its feet instantly became docile upon encountering what seemed like a king worthy of worship, spontaneously gathering and coiling around its golden blue fur before being quietly absorbed by its body, like tiny streams flowing into the ocean. And its target was that most robust and violent giant electrical python surging from the core's cracks. This python seemed to possess consciousness. Sensing the golden Pokémon's approach, it suddenly whipped its head around, emitting an angry hiss, and with the momentum to destroy everything, opened its massive maw made of pure violent energy and viciously lunged to bite. Watching this scene, Cynthia in front of the screen felt her heart jump into her throat, and the livestream viewers all broke out in cold sweats. However, facing this terrifying attack that could instantly vaporize steel, the golden figure's deep black eyes showed not a trace of fear, only an absolute, all-seeing calm. Just as the electrical python was about to devour it, the golden figure slowly raised its right claw. There was no earth-shaking energy eruption, no dazzling skill effects. Its claw tip simply made precise, effortless contact with a specific point on that violent electrical python, the core node where the energy was most chaotic and unstable. An indescribable, exquisitely precise electromagnetic wave, like the gentlest ripple, instantly spread outward from the golden figure's claw tip, covering the entire violent electrical current. The moment the golden Pokémon's claw touched the current, a miraculous scene occurred. That electrical python, originally writhing with destructive fury, stopped its violent thrashing as if it had been instantly injected with a sedative. Its blinding light also softened. The precise electromagnetic field created by the golden Pokémon's claw tip, like a masterful tuner, accurately adjusted each violent frequency within the current, soothing it. Even more shocking was that the golden Pokémon didn't absorb this energy into itself. Its body seemed to transform into the most perfect conductor, and the purified current it had organized didn't disappear, but as if given life and direction, flowed docilely down along its golden blue arms. These currents were no longer destructive pythons, but had transformed into streams of stable blue-white radiance, flowing upstream and inputting back into that broken core machine. The next moment, a scene like a divine miracle appeared. The violent energy chaos at the edges of the core's cracks, upon receiving those currents, began visibly healing and repairing at an incredible speed. In just a few dozen seconds, the golden Pokémon had successfully completely reversed that entire golden electrical python back into the core. As the machine finally stopped its high-speed humming and ceased operation completely, the red light also faded from this space, and everything finally returned to calm. Cynthia sat stunned in front of the screen. Everything she had just witnessed had undoubtedly brought her tremendous psychological shock. This golden Pokémon, after recovering its power, had clearly far exceeded that giant in both strength and ability to control electrical energy. She knew that creation and repair were always harder than destruction and ruin. The behavior of reversing electrical current and preventing the machine's destruction and explosion had looked effortless, but the difficulty of actually accomplishing it was unimaginably staggering. At this moment, she looked at that golden Pokémon that had reappeared before her, and just as she was about to say something, she saw it give her a deep look before turning to leave. After a few quick leaps, it disappeared from her sight, melting into the deep darkness not far away. Where it had just been standing, a small tuft of golden fur crackling with blue electricity had fallen to the ground. Before Cynthia's eyes, a line of text appeared. Congratulations! You have discovered the special item Golden Fur. Description: fur that fell from the mythical Pokémon Zeraora's body, containing powerful electrical current. Perhaps it could demonstrate special corresponding power in certain situations. Looking at this series of prompts before her, Cynthia suddenly recalled something. Zeraora. Right, she seemed to have seen a battle notification box pop up during the recent fight. Oh, that golden Pokémon's name was this. And the electrical giant it had fought against, what was its name again? Regi something. Cynthia tried hard to remember the text she had seen at the time, but found herself unable to recall it clearly. There was no helping it at the time, she had been in such deep shock that she had almost completely ignored the content in the battle box. So this Pokémon that had saved her twice, and which Iono had been desperately searching for, was actually named Zeraora? And just as she had been thinking, it wasn't an ordinary Pokémon, nor was it an Ultra Beast. But it also wasn't a legendary Pokémon, it was a mythical Pokémon. What kind of Pokémon classification was that? As Cynthia wondered about this internally, she saw a crimson figure cheerfully fly to her side. It came over excitedly and circled around her again and again, making happy sounds. Victini. This Pokémon was naturally Victini, and at this moment it looked like it was showing off to Cynthia, wearing an extremely proud expression. Cynthia also snapped out of her daze. Zeraora's sudden recovery of power seemed to have been thanks to Victini's assistance. The key to this battle appeared to be Zeraora, but actually it was Victini's power. But that scene still left Cynthia feeling somewhat incredulous. She couldn't help but focus her gaze on Victini's small body and confirm. So just now it was you who acted. Victini seemed to pause upon hearing this, then eagerly nodded, as if wanting to prove that he had indeed completely changed the tide of battle. Not only that, but a dazzling crimson radiance instantly blazed forth from Victini's body once again. This was exactly the same power he had infused into Zeraora, just somewhat diminished. Having confirmed this fact, Cynthia felt her emotions surge. At the time, she and the viewers in the livestream chat had thought this storyline had probably reached an unsalvageable point, and could only think about how to deal with that massive electrical giant next time. But she never expected Victini to burst forth with such incredible power and turn the tide. But she really couldn't understand how, with his tiny body, he could possibly unleash such vast and terrifying power. Moreover, Victini was only around level 40. According to the game's performance and real-world level conversion, he was just barely a gym leader level Pokémon. Why could such a Pokémon completely restore the HP and condition of a legendary level existence like Zeraora? And he even seemed to make it stronger? Just as she was pondering this, another line of colorful information, accompanied by cheerful music, began appearing and floating before her eyes. Ding! Please note. Your Pokémon's additional ability has been revealed. Information as follows. Pokémon ability Victory Star. Description: when a Pokémon with this ability is present in the party, all Pokémon's move accuracy increases by 10%, and experience gained from battle increases by 50%. Hidden effect: a Pokémon with this ability can infuse victory energy into any Pokémon, instantly restoring its HP and status to peak full condition, and temporarily boosting all its stats by 100% for the next 4 turns/1 minute. This ability can only affect the same Pokémon once per day. This ability cannot be used in official Pokémon League battles. Note: currently this ability's effective Pokémon level limit is 80. This limit will increase as this Pokémon's level increases. Looking at the colorful text prompt before her, Cynthia was momentarily speechless. Unconditional restoration of all HP, plus doubling all stats for 1 minute. Such an ability and characteristic could no longer be described with just the word overpowered, could it? Looking at that line of bright red ability text, Cynthia's livestream chat naturally exploded once again. Everyone had even forgotten to watch the screen and instead turned all their attention to this ability possessed by Victini. Holy shit, this ability bonus is insane, this is basically a walking cheat code. Who was it that said this guy was just a mascot before? Victory God. Victory God. Who was it that said the author designed this character with very conservative ability stats? Come face me. Look in my eyes. That brother who was going to hone to find this Pokémon, wait for me, I want to come with you. What Victory Star? Just call it Victory God at this point. Damn, the streamer really struck gold this time. I bet the streamer was probably unhappy about being forced to catch a Pokémon, but now she's probably over the moon. As the chat exploded with comments, Cynthia took quite a while to recover from the fresh shock that Victini's ability had brought her. Today she had first witnessed an up-close, first-person experience of a battle between two legendary-level Pokémon that shook heaven and earth, and then suddenly discovered that this Pokémon in her party had an incredibly overpowered ability. If she didn't have such strong mental fortitude, she'd probably feel like fainting by now. At this moment, Cynthia looked at Victini, and after a long while, she input an interaction command, patting Victini's head and praising him. So you have such incredible power. That's truly amazing, Victini. Thank you so much this time. She still found it somewhat unbelievable, looking Victini up and down, and discovered that after infusing Zeraora with that kind of power, he showed no signs of weakness or discomfort. On the contrary, he seemed more energetic and lively than before. She couldn't help but ask again. So using this power doesn't have any restrictions or effects on you? Vict. Victini shook his head repeatedly upon hearing this. However, Cynthia was now confused. She couldn't understand what Victini was saying, so she didn't know whether his head shaking meant he was negating her words, or indicating that there really wouldn't be any restrictions or effects. Looking at Victini before her, Cynthia thought about it and decided it was probably the latter. Because this little guy really did seem to have no problems whatsoever right now. But if that was the case, it would be even more terrifying. This ability had a limit of once per day for each Pokémon, but for Victini himself there was no cooldown time or cost. This meant that as long as Cynthia wanted, in a single battle, she could have Victini grant this additional effect to each of her Pokémon. That would be equivalent to each Pokémon in her team having an extra HP bar, plus the heaven-defying bonus of doubled stats for 1 minute. And this was just its performance in this game. What about in the real world? Cynthia found herself not daring to think further. If such a Pokémon really appeared in the real world, the issue probably wouldn't just be countless trainers fighting over it, as she had thought before. The entire world would probably go crazy for it. After all, whoever obtained this Pokémon would be like gaining an endless source of energy. If it were wartime, it could even power up every single Pokémon in an entire army. Whoever possessed it would possess victory. No wonder its ability was called Victory Star. Thinking of this, Cynthia couldn't help but shake her head repeatedly. It seemed that, just as she had thought, not every Pokémon in the game had a corresponding existence in the real world. This Pokémon was most likely something the author had created as an assistant and benefit for players. It had to be, right? As Cynthia held Victini and pondered this, the chat discussion had shifted from Victini to the battle between those two legendary level Pokémon. So that golden Pokémon is called Zeraora. Damn, it's really cool. It feels like a Pokémon from a dream. After watching today's storyline, I now understand why that Iono guy is so obsessed with this creature. Anyone who sees it would be mesmerized. Exactly. I'll say this honestly, although I'm not a Pokémon fan or a furry, if it's Zeraora we're talking about, that's not entirely off the table. Dude above, watch yourself, your pants just flew into my face. There's no way such a Pokémon could exist in the real world, right? That massive electrical giant from before might still have some possibility, but I think this Victini that our streamer has and that Zeraora are probably created by the author. Hard to say. Actually, that electrical giant wasn't weak either, doesn't seem like it would be a real existing Pokémon either. What about those two fighting in Galar before? Who do you think is stronger? The chat discussion went from the incredible power displayed by Zeraora and Victini to debating the reality of these Pokémon's existence. Obviously, most of them shared the same thoughts as Cynthia, reaching identical conclusions. And just as the chat was in heated discussion, in the game, Cynthia looked at the scene of devastation all around and suddenly leaned back in the chair behind her, letting out a long sigh. That golden electrical giant named Regi something had been completely defeated by Zeraora, and the core machine inside the power plant had returned to normal. Although many of the surrounding auxiliary machines and pipes had suffered considerable damage, and the ground of the entire core area was in ruins. But according to her understanding of power plants, as long as this most expensive core machine was undamaged, the power plant could resume operation within 2 days. This was already the best possible outcome for the situation just now. Not only did the power plant not explode, but even the core machine was preserved intact, and this was all thanks to that Zeraora and her own Victini. Without Victini's power boost, or Zeraora's amazing performance, this crisis probably couldn't have been resolved so easily. But at this moment, Cynthia couldn't help but think deeply again, and she suddenly discovered a problem. If this was a storyline segment within the game, wouldn't the participation difficulty be a bit too high from a player's perspective? After all, not every player would find the secret path by using strength to break through the fire shortcut like she had, thereby finding a powerful Pokémon like Victini that was basically like a cheat code, and having him play a crucial role at the key moment. If players who hadn't obtained Victini entered this power plant storyline, would they only have the path of failure? Based on Cynthia's understanding of this game, her intuition told her that probably wasn't the case. But for the moment, she really couldn't figure out how this crisis should have been resolved without Victini powering up Zeraora. But regardless, in the storyline where she was the protagonist, everything had been resolved perfectly. Thinking of this, Cynthia sat up again and used her Pokeballs in the game to recall those Pokemon lying on the ground. During the recent battle, she had already confirmed that these guys had only entered a paralyzed state due to the electrical current impact and temporarily lost their fighting ability. They should all be fine. They just needed to go to a Pokemon Center to restore their condition. Of course, she could also have Victini power them up to restore their strength, but according to Victini's ability description, this opportunity only came once. Cynthia decided to save it carefully for emergencies. She also suddenly remembered that this ability seemed to have a significant limitation: it couldn't be used in official league battles. This meant that in upcoming gym battles, or battles with professional league trainers, she probably wouldn't be able to use this ability to give herself an advantage. But as long as it wasn't an official league battle, the situation would be completely different. Like her previous rival. And that guy called Paul, whose Pokemon had extremely high strength levels. Even Team Rocket's 3 members. Although Cynthia had never been a particularly scheming person. Thinking about what might happen next, she couldn't help but want to smile a little. With this thought, Cynthia shook her head slightly. Since the situation at the power plant was completely resolved, it was time for her to leave. Thinking of this, she waved her hand, had Victini returned to her shoulder, and prepared to go back to Movely City to tell everything that had happened here to Watson. However, just as she was about to leave. From the distant ruins, a dazzling golden radiance suddenly illuminated this dark space, catching Cynthia's attention. Chapter 95: The Core of Rage-Illicky and the Activation of the Mysterious Gate. The source of that golden radiance seemed to be something within the mechanical ruins nearby. As Cynthia maneuvered her character forward and pushed aside a pile of scrap metal and charred debris, a powerful electrical current suddenly erupted from the wreckage, forcing her game character back several steps. A golden fragment about the size of a fist, irregularly shaped, floated inches above the ground, slowly rotating. It didn't look like steel, but more like flowing golden liquid, with restless tiny electric arcs dancing across its entire surface. The fragment's surface was covered with intricate grooves and energy patterns so precise they were almost dizzying to look at, as if some incredibly complex structure had been miniaturized within it. At this moment, accompanying its appearance, it began emanating sharp energy waves, like a compressed thunderstorm core suddenly bursting with wave after wave of electrical current. These currents carried an overwhelming sense of pressure. Cynthia's character had only taken one step closer when the edges of her screen began showing subtle electrical patterns, and her character displayed the yellow special effects representing static status, electricity that seemed powerful enough to instantly paralyze and knock out ordinary Pokemon. This thing. At this moment, looking at what lay before her, Cynthia seemed to suddenly realize something. No wonder she felt this looked familiar when she first saw it. Wasn't this the fragment that had fallen from the electrical giant's body when Zeraora had shattered it with a single punch during that intense battle? And the piece in front of her now was clearly much larger and more powerful than the other fragments. Could this be the core piece from deep within that electrical giant? Just as Cynthia was thinking this over, facing the raging electrical currents before her, Victini on her shoulder suddenly flew up. Teeny! With his cry, deep crimson radiance erupted from his body once again, just like the power he had channeled into Zeraora earlier, though slightly weaker. But even so, this power was clearly sufficient to suppress these electrical currents. Soon those violent currents quieted down under the surrounding red light, retreating back into that core. Victini flew forward, directly lifting the core and bringing it back to present it to Cynthia. Thanks. Cynthia was momentarily stunned, taking the core from his hands. Since this was in the game, she couldn't tell what its weight and mass were like, or what it would feel like to hold. But a notification quickly appeared before her eyes in golden text, revealing information about this core fragment. Ding! Congratulations, player has obtained a special item. Rage-Illicky's core fragment. Description: the most powerful fragment from the core center of the legendary Pokémon Electric Titan Rage-Illicky's body. Contains Rage-Illicky's life force and fundamental power. Simply inject it with sufficient electricity to make Rage-Illicky reappear in this world. And it may also contain some other incredible abilities. Scanning through this string of information that appeared before her, Cynthia's eyebrows raised slightly. Rage-Illicky? So that powerful golden giant's name was Rage-Illicky? And at this moment, Cynthia suddenly realized another new issue: there were 3 characters before this Pokémon's name, Electric Titan. Seeing these 3 characters, Cynthia's eyes widened. She finally understood why she felt the creature called Ragilaki looked somewhat familiar when she first encountered it. The reason was simple: like the previous rock titan Ragirok, Ragilaki also had a massive body towering into the clouds, and its body was also composed of pure elemental matter. Ragirok was rock, while this one was electricity. It was just that the scene had been too overwhelming at the time, so Cynthia hadn't immediately thought in this direction. But now the item description of that core fragment reminded Cynthia, making her remember this fact. So this guy, like Ragirok, was also a legendary Pokémon of the Titan species? But in her memory, there were only 3 Pokémon belonging to the Titan species. They were Rock Titan Ragirok, Ice Titan Regis, and Steel Titan Registeel. These 3 Pokémon had all appeared in the Hone region and were considered the legendary Pokémon with the most eyewitness accounts in the Hone region over the past few hundred years. Cynthia, who was knowledgeable about legendary Pokémon mythology, naturally knew of these 3's existence clearly, and had recognized Ragirok's identity at first glance when encountering the Rock Titan. But the problem was, where did this Electric Titan come from? How did it replace Registeel? As Cynthia stood there bewildered, she suddenly remembered something. Wait, could this guy, like that Zeraora, also be an original Pokémon created by the author? If that were the case, then everything would make sense and wouldn't be strange anymore. But since this game had an Electric Titan as a legendary Pokémon, did other types also have corresponding Titans? Once this thought emerged from her mind, Cynthia felt a bit of a headache coming on. Just one Electric Titan had already caused such a huge commotion in this game. If Titans of all other types came and pulled similar stunts, she wasn't sure if the people of this world and herself could handle it. Of course, thinking about this, Cynthia also felt somewhat relieved that she hadn't rushed to awaken Ragirok or done anything reckless. From this Electric Titan's performance, these legendary Titans probably didn't have very good tempers, which matched the records in real-world mythology. Most of the time, they seemed to act purely on instinct, so they could easily cause devastating damage to their surroundings, other Pokémon, and even human society. This power plant incident also served as a warning to Cynthia that if she wanted to awaken that Rock Titan in the future, she'd need to be fully prepared for battle. Otherwise, she'd really have summoned herself a living nightmare to chase her around. With this thought, Cynthia carefully maneuvered her game character to place the Electric Titan's core into her game inventory. However, the next moment, her screen suddenly went black. Cynthia was immediately startled. Another new cutscene? Her instinct told her that every time this game triggered a cutscene, it meant something big was about to happen. No way, was the power plant situation still not over? However, what happened next didn't unfold as Cynthia had anticipated. The cutscene's perspective quickly moved away from the power plant where she currently was, soaring through the distant sky, and soon switched to an area Cynthia was very familiar with. It was unmistakably the desert she had visited today. At this moment, time was approaching evening, and under the dim sky, Cynthia could still see clearly. That mysterious and eerie tower in the desert had somehow reappeared there, standing tall among the endless yellow sand, towering into the clouds, still emanating an inexplicable attraction. Seeing this scene, Cynthia couldn't help but be stunned. Wasn't she at the power plant? Why was a cutscene from that area being triggered? Could this scene just be to remind her that the tower in the desert had reappeared? This did match her previous assessment that this tower would refresh and appear in the desert at regular intervals. But just as Cynthia was thinking this over, the cutscene's perspective changed again, zooming in from far away, entering directly into the first floor of that tower. The gate that had previously blocked Cynthia's progress and exploration appeared before her eyes again. At this moment, in the mural carved on the gate, the orange-yellow line at the bottom of the 3 symbols suddenly blazed bright. Buzz! Brilliant electrical currents accompanied by golden radiance illuminated this space. The line floated and changed on the gate, finally transforming into a lightning symbol that settled there, still continuously radiating faint light in all directions. And Cynthia could clearly feel that the gate before her suddenly shuddered at this moment, as if shaken by something. Looking at that lightning symbol, Cynthia had a moment of confusion before suddenly realizing. Wait, lightning? Electric Titan? So the yellow line at the bottom of the symbols carved on this mysterious giant gate actually represented the Electric Titan Ragilaki? After Zeraora defeated Ragilaki, the corresponding symbol had also lit up. This couldn't be a coincidence. Which meant? Her gaze immediately fell on the other 2 symbols carved on the gate, one was a deep blue square, and the other was a brownish cube. If yellow represented the Electric-type Titan Ragilaki, then this deep blue square that looked like ice crystal must represent the Ice Titan Regis, right? The brownish cube's corresponding Pokémon was even more obvious, it had to be the Rock Titan Regirock she had encountered before. So this was the method she'd been looking for to open that gate? Defeat the 3 Titans and light up their corresponding symbols to enter the depths of this tower? Cynthia's mind worked quite quickly, immediately making this judgment based on what she was seeing. But at this moment, new questions began surfacing in her mind. According to her understanding of the Titan Pokémon, the 3 Titans of the Hone region should be the Steel Titan, Ice Titan, and Rock Titan, but now the Steel Titan's position had been replaced by this Electric Titan called Regilaki. It couldn't be that the Steel Titan was hidden behind this gate, could it? Cynthia felt this was unlikely. According to the information she understood from mythology, the 3 legendary beasts should be of equal status. Then an even more terrifying question emerged. If opening that gate required defeating 3 legendary Pokémon, wouldn't what was hidden behind it be even more amazing than these 3 legendary Pokémon? As Cynthia pondered this, the cutscene before her had ended, and among the viewers in the live stream, some smart ones had already figured it out. I get it now. To open that gate, you still need to take down 2 more terrifying Pokémon like this guy. Is this even humanly possible to design as a requirement? If the lightning corresponds to this Regilaki, then the rock should correspond to the previous Regirock, right? But what does that ice represent? Do you think there might be a legendary Pokémon even stronger than the 3 Titans behind that door? I can answer that question above. Actually, behind the door is Nova, who got bored and decided to come out and play. That's right, I think Nova is way stronger than these so-called Titans. Need I say more? The Victory God isn't just a title. As the chat erupted in heated discussion, Cynthia also fell into deep thought. She suddenly retrieved another memory fragment from the depths of her mind. Many years ago, when she had gone to a museum in the Hone region to investigate some ancient archives about the 3 Titans, she seemed to have read some scattered content. The author mentioned that although these 3 Titans were very powerful and encounters with them weren't uncommon, they never seemed to fight among themselves. This was actually quite rare among legendary Pokémon. Normally, the more similar legendary Pokémon were in strength, the more likely they were to battle each other. In this regard, they weren't different from wild Pokémon. The author of that document theorized that although these 3 Titans had different types, they had remarkably similar body structures and should belong to the same species. Moreover, he suspected that above these 3 Titans, there was another, more powerful being commanding them. Cynthia naturally disagreed with the author's first point. But the latter viewpoint caught her attention and made her think it had some merit. Having studied legendary Pokémon for so many years, what Cynthia understood best wasn't actually the legendary Pokémon native to the Sinnoh region, but rather the 3 legendary birds of the Kanto region, because the documentation about them was the most extensive among all legendary Pokémon. Although she had never seen them personally, she knew these 3 legendary birds served under an even more powerful legendary Pokémon. Because someone had once witnessed a massive white figure passing through the clouds, with the 3 legendary birds following closely behind. If that were the case, could these 3 Titans be in a similar situation? And if she reasoned this way, then what awaited her behind that gate? Cynthia's gaze immediately sharpened. It would probably be like that white legendary Pokémon, an existence that commanded all the Titans. Chapter 96 Watson's Generous Rewards, Aerodactyl, I'm outta here. Just thinking about this problem made Cynthia feel much more cautious all of a sudden. After all, even that legendary Pokémon called Regilaki had displayed such incredibly impressive strength and power. So just how powerful must the being capable of commanding these legends be? If they let this guy out later and it goes on another rampage like that, she'd really have her hands full. But even so, as a mythology researcher, Cynthia was still filled with intense curiosity about whatever might appear behind that massive door. In fact, her curiosity was even stronger now than before. After all, no one could say for sure what was really behind that door, or whether it was truly as she suspected. At the same time, she turned her attention back to the Regilaki core fragment in her bag. After defeating Regilaki, the corresponding rune and symbol had been activated and lit up. Looking at it this way, if she wanted to open that door, she'd have to awaken Regirock and then defeat it, too. The remaining Regis was probably the same situation. Regirock's location and awakening method were already clear, so now only Regis's location remained unknown. But speaking of this, Cynthia suddenly remembered something else. The place where Grassidea flower seeds could grow successfully needed to be surrounded by extreme cold. This was the most basic requirement. Once the temperature got even slightly higher, it would be unable to grow and would die. And the place where Regius, that is, Regis, lived should be exactly that kind of environment, right? Of course, Cynthia wasn't sure if that kind of place would still have soil suitable for flowers to grow. With this thought, Cynthia shook her head slightly, closed her bag interface, and took one last look at the Ragilaki core fragment. The biggest use of this thing should be that after recharging it with electricity, it could restore Ragilaki to its full power and awaken it. But Cynthia obviously wouldn't do that. After all, Zeraora had already left, and even if Victini gave all the Pokémon in her team a power boost, she still wouldn't be a match for that guy. However, this did remind Cynthia of something. Having this item meant that when her strength in the game reached a level where she could face Ragilaki, she could summon it and then defeat it fair and square through battle to capture it, right? At this thought, Cynthia's heart suddenly trembled. During this time, she had almost forgotten that she was in the world of a game. As long as it was a game, it had infinite possibilities. Wasn't the author's purpose in setting up these core fragments to give players a chance to capture Ragilaki when conditions were right in the future? In other words, she actually had a chance to capture a real legendary Pokémon? And probably not just this one. Whether it was the possible existence behind that door, or the other Regis, or even those two incredibly powerful figures she'd seen in the sword. Even more amazingly, the Rayquaza she'd been desperately searching for might be possible, too. Even Cynthia couldn't help but let a slight smile cross her lips when she thought about such possibilities. Even if it was just in a game, she'd still be accomplishing something that no one in the world had ever done before. The meaning and value of that was still significant. After her long contemplation about Ragilaki and Divine Beast-related matters ended, Cynthia took one last look at the massive generator behind her that had stopped running, and finally controlled her character to prepare to leave. But just as she stepped out of the core power plant area, her screen suddenly went black again, making her frown. Why was another cutscene triggering? However, this time the game's camera didn't go to some distant place like last time, but stayed in the dark ruins of the power plant. After Cynthia's character left, following a brief silence, a black figure suddenly stood up from behind the generator. It was a man wearing a cloak, with a mask covering his face so his features couldn't be seen. His cloak was decorated with stars that sparkled with rainbow-colored light, looking mesmerizing and ethereal, like a scene from the depths of space. He watched the direction Cynthia had just left, then looked at the ruins beside him, and gently pressed a button on his shoulder. A light screen immediately appeared, and he began making his report. Reporting to headquarters. Have obtained combat data for World Number 32's Legendary Pokémon Number 9 Ragilaki and Mythical Pokémon Number 10 Zeraora, and additionally discovered traces of Mythical Pokémon Number 3 Victini. It is currently with a human trainer. I will upload detailed combat intelligence immediately upon return. This Regi weapon testing program is temporarily suspended, awaiting further orders from superiors. World Number 32 Observer, report complete. Listening to his series of statements, Cynthia immediately caught a huge amount of information. World Number 32? Mythical Pokémon Victini? So her Victini was the same as that Zeraora, both belonging to the so-called Mythical Pokémon classification? But what did this World Number 32 mean? Could there be many different worlds existing in the game? Also, Cynthia's gaze fell on the man. She'd never seen such clothing and appearance before, but from his words, he seemed to belong to some organization. Just as Cynthia was pondering the origins of this person, she saw the man turn around and point his hands in the air. A vortex suddenly formed beside him, filled with endless void and darkness, and the man stepped directly into it and disappeared. The depths of the entire power plant returned to silence once again, as if the man had never appeared at all. But at this moment, Cynthia stared at the scene before her, completely stunned. Because in the instant the man turned around, she clearly saw that on the back of his cloak was a large letter R shining with rainbow-colored light. This was Team Rocket's symbol. But unlike the red Team Rocket logo she remembered, this massive R was flickering with rainbow-colored light like stars. So who exactly was this guy? Someone from Team Rocket? Cynthia couldn't help but frown. Meanwhile, the chat comments in the livestream naturally started discussing after seeing this cutscene. Holy crap, was that guy just now the mastermind behind this whole thing? I knew there was no way a little power plant could have two legendary Pokémon showing up one after another. The streamer walked right into someone else's trap. Did you guys see? That looked like Team Rocket's symbol just now, but it seemed a bit different. Could there be another Team Rocket in this world? I think the comment above might be onto something. This author's imagination is really something else. Being able to design this kind of plot isn't impossible, after all, it's a game, so they can write whatever they want, haha. I get the feeling they're planning something big. Go get them, streamer. All evil will face justice. Looking at the discussion in the chat, Cynthia shook her head slightly. This should also be part of the author's original storyline, right? After all, how could there be humans in the real world who could tear through space at will and travel through those black holes? But she was still curious about this organization's true identity. From that person's tone, it seemed like the appearance of legendary Pokémon was just something they could observe and treat as routine business. That was pretty incredible. But regardless, it was clear that such a mysterious and powerful organization was obviously beyond what her current strength in the game could handle. With this thought, Cynthia shook her head and pressed the A button again, ending the cutscene. After leaving the power plant, she retraced her route north and returned to Movely City. By now, it was dusk, and the electricity on the main streets had been cut off due to the power plant shutting down, leaving everything dark around her. The city's residents had all come out onto the streets, looking around, curious about what was happening. When Cynthia returned to the entrance of Movely Gym, she quickly spotted Watson looking somewhat anxious. From far away, Watson noticed Cynthia's character approaching, immediately getting a red exclamation mark above his head as he came over to greet her. Cynthia expected him to immediately ask about the situation at the power plant, but surprisingly, after Watson ran over, he looked her character up and down completely before seeming relieved. Thank goodness! Strawberry ice cream, you're back! There were huge explosion sounds from the power plant earlier, and the whole city's electrical system got cut off. I was worried something had happened to you. Thank heaven you're okay. I should never have given such a dangerous task to a kid like you. Cynthia was stunned for a moment, and the chat comments burst into laughter. This old guy, I mean, you could say he's bad, he nearly got the streamer killed by a legendary Pokémon. But you could also say he's good, when something went wrong, the first thing he did was come check if the streamer was okay. Hard to judge, haha. LOL, to be fair, who could have expected the power plant malfunction was because there was a legendary Pokémon inside absorbing electricity. Even if Watson scratched his head bald, he probably couldn't have thought of something like that. Hey, reminder, the guy's got male pattern baldness, there's no hair on top to begin with. He's already bald. While the chat was having a good laugh, a prompt appeared in front of Cynthia. Tell Watson about what happened at the power plant. Yes/no. Cynthia naturally had nothing to hesitate about and chose yes. After a brief blackout, the screen changed. Watson literally jumped up from where he stood, with several huge exclamation marks and question marks popping up above his head. You said what? The legendary Regieleki was absorbing electricity, then a mythical Pokémon came and drove it away? And you have a mythical Pokémon with you, too. Strawberry ice cream, you're not pulling my leg, are you? I like to joke around usually, but let's not kid about stuff like this. However, seeing Cynthia's character nod seriously once again, Watson's expression immediately became grave. So you're telling the truth? This is really something else. I need to report this to the League right away. He turned to leave in a cold sweat, then suddenly seemed to remember something and ran back to Cynthia's character. No matter what, thank you so much for this. To show my gratitude and apology, please take all this stuff, consider it a token of my appreciation. Ding! Congratulations, player has obtained special item High Quality Thunderstone X1. Ding! Congratulations, player has obtained special Pokeballs Insulation Ball X5, Trademark, Volt Switch X1, Magnet X1, Luxury Bike Voucher X1. Honestly, since Cynthia started playing this game, this was the first time she'd seen so many rewards. The information boxes for all those rewards were making her eyes swim for a moment, she couldn't take them all in. And the chat comments exploded again, seeing this string of reward notifications. Who was just saying Watson was bad? Come forward. What Watson? Call him Uncle Watson. Uncle Watson really feels guilty. He even gave out the luxury bike voucher that he probably couldn't bear to use himself. That thing looks really valuable, lol. Well, the streamer just survived a battle between two legendary Pokémon. A few extra rewards are totally deserved, right? While the chat was rapidly discussing, Cynthia roughly checked the effects of the reward items she'd received. First was the luxury bike voucher that the chat had pointed out. According to the item's description, she just needed to go to a bike shop in Movili City and could exchange this voucher for a luxury bike for free. But what was the bike for? Cynthia really couldn't figure it out. She guessed it might just be a simple transportation tool that could speed up her character's movement, like those running shoes her mom gave her when she left Little Root Town, similar effect. It's just that a bike sounded more advanced than running shoes, so the movement speed would probably be faster too. Besides that, the magnet was an item Cynthia knew about. It was a held item that greatly benefited electric-type Pokémon. Once they held it, all electric-type moves would get a certain power boost. In this game, the boost was 30%, while in reality, it would show different enhancement effects based on the held item's quality and the Pokémon's level and strength. Besides the magnet, the Volt Switch trademark was even more obvious. This move let electric-type Pokémon attack while immediately returning to their team, a very flexible technique. Unfortunately, only Rotom and Cynthia's current team could learn this move, and it didn't seem to have much need for switching out. After all, with its different appliance forms, it could flexibly handle different opponents, plus its levitate ability made it immune to ground-type moves. Usually, it was opponents running from it, not the other way around. But having an extra trademark was still having another option, better than nothing. Besides those two items, first was a Thunderstone of extremely high quality. This was the first time Cynthia had seen an evolution stone described as extremely high quality in this game. It was obviously quite rare. Whether she used it to awaken Regirock later or sold it for money, it would be a great choice. It really seemed like one of Watson's treasured possessions. As for the last reward, it was somewhat beyond Cynthia's expectations, several special Pokeballs with rubber-like coating on the outside, completely black in color. According to the game's description, these Pokeballs could insulate against electrical currents when catching electric-type Pokémon, greatly improving capture success rates. Regarding Pokeballs, Cynthia seemed to have noticed something. It seemed like in this game, some Pokeballs had specific capture rate bonuses for certain types and categories of Pokémon. But in the real world, the only Pokeballs she knew of were regular balls, Great Balls, and Ultra Balls. Some high-end Pokeballs did differ from regular ones, but most weren't improvements in capture performance and functionality, rather, the internal environment would be more comfortable, making life better for the Pokémon. As champion, she naturally used all these high-end Pokeballs. But compared to all these varied Pokeballs in the game, the real world's ball varieties seemed pretty limited. After reviewing her rewards, Cynthia began thinking about her next destination. This wasn't just a simple travel decision like going to Verdanturf Town, but a review of all her upcoming goals. After all, going to the next gym for a challenge and badge was just the main quest. Beyond the main quest, she'd gained many side quests. Like repairing the decayed sword she'd gotten from the room in Petalburg Woods, or finding a way through the layers of mist in the old mansion to explore what the powerful being Rhoda mentioned really was. Then there was awakening Regirock, finding Regis, and somehow using their power to break the seal on that massive, mysterious door to explore the secrets hidden deep in that tower. Even the Regilla key core fragment she carried was like a time bomb, who knew if it might suddenly awaken someday. Such rich game content naturally made Cynthia feel quite pleased, since this all related to legendary Pokémon, and exploring everything about legendary Pokémon was her hobby. From the current situation, awakening Regirock should be the easiest task, since she just needed to keep collecting various ores and evolution stones until she could successfully awaken it someday. The problem was that if Regirock had the same personality as Regilla Key, there would be an unavoidable battle. Cynthia fell into thought. Based on the information Victimizability had shown, its effective level cap was 80, meaning that Zeraura's level probably hadn't reached 80 either, likely around 70. In its injured state, Zeraura wasn't a match for Regilla Key, which had absorbed massive amounts of electricity. Judging by power levels, under normal circumstances, they should be Pokémon of the same tier. So Regilla Key's level should also be around 70. Thus, as another member of the Regis, Regirock's level probably wouldn't be higher than this threshold either. This way, working backward, to be safe, when her team reached level 65, she could awaken Regirock. If they really had to fight then, with 6 Pokémon at levels close to its own, there really wouldn't be anything to fear. With this thought, Cynthia set her goal. First, she'd unlock the level 60 threshold. Now that she'd completed the 5th gym, her level cap had increased to 50. She wondered how many more gyms she'd need to defeat before unlocking the level 60 cap. But it should be soon, right? After reviewing Watson's rewards, the side quests in Movely City were finally complete. Cynthia thought about it and decided not to head directly toward Verdanturf Town on the right. Instead, after recovering at the Pokémon Center, she went back through Fiery Path to Petalburg Woods and arrived at Bill's lab. Based on real-world time estimates, Bill should have successfully revived the other fossil by now. When Cynthia reached Bill's lab entrance, the scene indeed confirmed her thinking was correct. Because at this moment, the lab's front door was completely gone. Even with the previous Dracovish, it had only destroyed part of the door. But now an entire wall of Bill's lab entrance was nearly gone. Standing at the entrance, Cynthia could directly see Bill sitting dejectedly in his chair. She immediately controlled her character to enter the lab and patted his shoulder. "Bill, what's the situation here?" Bill was startled by Cynthia's sudden arrival and literally bounced up from his chair. Then he turned around, looked somewhat embarrassedly at the chaos behind him and the lab's missing front entrance, and sighed with a complex expression. "Well, I did successfully revive the fossil you gave me. But it seemed really excited. The moment it came out, it crashed right through my lab's front door and flew away. I was going to help you catch it with a pokeball ahead of time, but before I could even take a photo, it was gone. Actually, it wasn't just my front door. It crashed through the front door first, then broke through the ceiling before flying out." Hearing Bill's words, Cynthia instinctively looked up. When she saw the hole about 2 meters wide in the ceiling, she couldn't help but crack up a little. These fossil Pokémon all seemed to share a common trait: they were particularly wild and had a kind of primitive, savage beauty. Although this fossil Pokémon was gone. But looking at it from one angle, at least she could tell one thing: this guy's strength was probably pretty impressive. Otherwise, it couldn't have nearly demolished Bill's entire lab. Cynthia thought for a moment, looking at Bill's dejected, miserable expression, and couldn't help but offer some comfort. "It's okay. You successfully reviving a fossil Pokémon counts as success. I don't necessarily need to catch it to be happy, and besides, I already have 6 Pokémon in my team, that's enough." Then she looked again at Bill's crumbling lab, trying to find something to say to comfort him. After holding back for a long time, she only managed. "Although there's a hole in the roof and the front door's gone, at least your machines and data are still." However, just as Cynthia was speaking, the next moment, there was a loud crash. Half the lab ceiling collapsed directly down, covering Bill's fossil revival machine and data. "Cynthia. So. Do you have backups of your machines and data?" The good news was that, as a professional researcher, Bill did have backups of those materials and the machine's construction methods. The bad news was that Bill was crying pretty sadly. If he'd known that reviving fossil Pokémon would destroy his entire lab, he never would have researched this stuff. However, soon after hearing that Cynthia was willing to fund rebuilding a new laboratory for him, Bill's eyes lit up again, and he seemed to regain his soul. At the same time, he suddenly slapped his forehead, remembering something. "Oh, right. I almost forgot to tell you. When I successfully revived that Pokémon, I found something interesting in its fossil. That thing seems to contain a really strong energy reaction, but I can't figure out what it's for." With that, he searched through his shirt pocket and soon pulled something out. The moment she saw that thing, Cynthia's eyes widened in shock. A glass orb shape, with a deep purple base color containing a spiral structure of purple, grey, and black. This was another Megastone. Chapter 97 Iono, Norman, I'm going all out against you. A series of notification messages popped up before her eyes at that moment. "Congratulations player, you have obtained the special item Aerodactyl Megastone." Looking at the string of notifications in front of her, Cynthia couldn't help but freeze for a moment. She had originally thought that whatever emerged from this fossil would be another Pokémon's Megastone, but the current notification indicated that it actually corresponded to Aerodactyl. This meant that Aerodactyl also possessed that kind of Mega Evolution form. She really hadn't expected that even these fossil Pokémon from ancient times could undergo Mega Evolution. After all, these fossil Pokémon were already incredibly skilled and powerful individually. If they could complete that special evolution on top of their original strength, the potential they could unleash would probably be even more extraordinary. She had just learned that the Pokémon called Aerodactyl had escaped directly from Bill's research lab, and initially hadn't felt too regretful about it. After all, as she had mentioned, her current team already had a full 6 Pokémon. If she were to catch another one, she'd have to store one Pokémon in the Pokémon Center's PC system. But now that she had Aerodactyl's Megastone in her hands, the situation was completely different. If she didn't find a way to catch that Aerodactyl, wouldn't that mean this Megastone would go to waste? Thinking about this, Cynthia couldn't help but feel a bit of a headache. After all, who could have predicted that hatching a fossil would also produce its matching accessory? However, Cynthia thought it over and realized that even without this Megastone, she should have caught that guy anyway. After all, that ancient Pokémon called Aerodactyl was something she had commissioned Bill to revive. Its personality didn't seem like the gentle, human-friendly type of Pokémon. If it appeared in the city, it would probably end up hurting people and causing widespread destruction. Since it came into existence because of her, she naturally had to take responsibility for this Pokémon. With this thought, her gaze fell on Bill. What did that Pokémon from earlier look like? If I encounter it later, I'll try to catch it. Bill was stunned for a moment, then roughly described the Pokémon's appearance to Cynthia. After hearing Bill's description, Cynthia nodded slightly. So it was a flying-type Pokémon, perhaps somewhat similar to the Archon she had encountered before. But in terms of size, this Aerodactyl was definitely much larger. Otherwise, it couldn't have smashed such a big hole in the roof. After understanding the situation with Aerodactyl, Cynthia prepared to say goodbye to Bill. As for their agreement, based on Cynthia's experience, as her game progress advanced, the scale of money she could obtain in the game would grow larger and larger. When she had more funds available, she could invest in Bill to set up a new research lab. Her intuition told her that even within the game, this person's research capabilities were quite formidable. If she invested in him, he might be able to produce some valuable and innovative research results. After exchanging contact information with Bill and registering him in her communication device, Cynthia waved her hand and pressed the interaction button to speak. Mr. Bill, I'll be going now. I'll give you the research lab investment in a few days. If you have any clues about that Pokémon, remember to tell me. If I discover new active fossils in the future, I'll bring them to you. Bill was stunned for a moment before coming to his senses. All right, benefactor, take care. His expression changed for an instant. It seemed like Bill had originally wanted to emphasize how difficult active fossils were to find as special items, that it would be impossible to casually find another one. But thinking about the other fossil Cynthia had pulled out today, he decisively chose to shut his mouth. Who knew if this young lady might show up in a few days carrying yet another active fossil? After saying goodbye to Bill, Cynthia had originally planned to continue toward Petalburg City, but the drowsiness washing over her reminded her of something. It seemed like it was getting quite late. She minimized the game window to check the time in the bottom right corner, and discovered that without realizing it, the time had reached 12:30 a.m. Having always maintained early sleeping habits, at this time in the past, she would have already finished washing up and gone to bed. Ever since she started playing this Emerald game, she had frequently been breaking this routine. Come to think of it, she had been playing this game for quite a while today, a good half day. So she'd log off and sleep, ending here for today. With this thought, Cynthia nodded slightly toward the viewers in her live stream. Well everyone, today's stream ends here. Did you all enjoy today's session? The chat in the stream immediately began flooding with messages. Enjoyed it, of course we enjoyed it. Getting to see 2 legendary Pokémon battle, such an exciting thing, what's not to be satisfied with? Cynthia, you made so much progress today too. Looks like you cleared 2 gyms in one go. At this rate, won't you be challenging the Elite Four in just a couple more days? Haha, the streamer is already a champion, and now she's going to walk the champion's path again? Interesting. Looking forward to seeing how insane the Elite Four and champion Pokémon configurations are. Part of the chat was happily communicating with Cynthia. While another group, having finished watching today's stream content, was already eager to experience it firsthand. Some were even playing while watching the stream. You guys keep chatting, I'm out of here. I want to see if I can clear the Rustboro Gym today. The content ahead looks too epic, I'm really motivated to play. Bro above, how many days has it been and you're still stuck on Rustboro Gym? Don't tell people outside that you're one of Cynthia's followers, it's too embarrassing. What's wrong with being stuck on the first gym? Not everyone can casually trigger bond effects and survive with 1 HP like the streamer. I've been battling all night while watching the stream and still haven't cleared it. If you're so good, you try it, remember to post a strategy guide on the forum to help everyone out. As the chat frantically refreshed with messages, Cynthia let out a light sigh, closed the stream, and exited the game interface. After playing all day, she was indeed feeling somewhat fatigued, though this fatigue was physical rather than mental. While her body was tired, her emotions had actually remained in a relatively high and excited state throughout. After all, today Cynthia had not only witnessed battles between legendary Pokémon, but had also encountered 2 completely new mythical Pokémon, and one was even on her own team. Although she still didn't quite understand what exactly this classification of mythical Pokémon meant. Was it a rarity level between legendary Pokémon and ordinary Pokémon, or was it above legendary Pokémon? With this thought, Cynthia shook her head slightly and got up from her computer desk, stretching comfortably. She had originally planned to go wash up and sleep directly, but mentioning mythical Pokémon reminded her of something important. When she was chatting with Iono on the forum earlier, Iono had been the first to provide her with information about Ultra Wormholes and Zeraora, and she had promised that once she had information about that Pokémon, she would tell Iono immediately. Since she had now personally witnessed Zeraora's earth-shattering battle and even learned its name, Cynthia would naturally honor her agreement. It was just that at this hour, might Iono already be asleep? After brief consideration, she still sat back down at her computer and opened her forum web page. It had only been an afternoon and evening since the forum was created, but the posts within had already shown exponential growth, with registered users and players reaching over 2,000. As for posts within the forum, there were over 100, though the number of posts about in-game strategies and content discussion wasn't very high. Most were casual chat and discussions about people's opinions on the game. This was understandable. After all, everyone was currently in the beginner stage of just starting to play. Generally, people came to forums to look up strategies, with relatively little information to share. As everyone's game progress continued advancing and their understanding of the game improved, the forum would definitely have many more useful pieces of information. Cynthia wasn't in a hurry. When she created this forum, she had already anticipated that it would probably take some time before she could obtain information that would be helpful to her. Someone like Iono providing clues about Ultra Wormholes right from the start was purely a rare occurrence. With this thought, Cynthia opened the forum's private message interface again and shared everything she had seen and experienced today with Iono. She mainly detailed Zeraora's combat abilities and its amazing performance when fighting against Regis Teal. What Cynthia didn't know was that at the exact moment she sent her message, in the Paldea region, Iono was sitting in front of her computer with a hesitant expression on her face. After a full day of playing, she had successfully arrived at Norman's gym entrance, preparing to begin her 5th gym battle in the game. However, at this moment, she was somewhat hesitant. Based on her experience, these gym battles were all quite difficult, with each gym leader having their own powerful Pokémon and some very innovative tactics and strategies. No matter which gym it was, up to this point, clearing it would take at minimum several hours, or at worst an entire afternoon or even most of a day. And it was already past midnight. If she went to challenge this gym now, by the time she came to her senses, who knew what time it would be? As for just going in for a simple try, Iono believed that probably wasn't possible. Based on her gaming experience from the past few days, as long as she lost to a gym leader in battle, she would immediately want to get revenge, entering a state of being totally absorbed. After careful consideration, she made her decision. Everyone, how about we end today's stream here? The streamer will get up early tomorrow to continue streaming. It's getting late now, right? However, her suggestion was clearly not well received by the viewers in her stream. Streamer, no. You've come this far, why not go in and take a look? This is your biological father's gym, he definitely won't go all out against you. Exactly, exactly. At worst, just go in and look around, fight one battle. Before sleeping tonight, the streamer can also think about how to clear it when she wakes up tomorrow, right? GG, you guys are up to no good, this gym looks difficult. You just don't want the streamer to sleep tonight, do you? Amid the chat's endless teasing, Iono considered for another moment before ultimately choosing to stick with her inner decision. Ever since she started playing this Emerald game, she had been sleeping very late every day, constantly in a state of being absorbed and obsessed. If she kept sleeping this late, her skin would start getting worse. So no matter what, she absolutely had to sleep early today. With this thought, Iono prepared to say goodbye to her stream viewers and exit the game. However, when she minimized the game window, she suddenly noticed that a window in the upper right corner of her browser had lit up with a red notification dot. This red dot seemed to be from the forum website she had just registered on today. She was stunned for a moment, then instinctively clicked to take a look. It was actually a private message from the person she had chatted with today. And when Ayano entered the chat interface and saw the large amount of text in front of her, she couldn't help but freeze again. How is there so much? But the next moment, her gaze became completely fixed. Friend, I've discovered some intelligence you might be interested in, it's about the Pokémon you're looking for. First, in the game, it's actually a mythical Pokémon called Zeraora. The viewers in the stream couldn't see what was happening outside Ayano's game window. When Ayano minimized the game, from their perspective, they could only see darkness. So naturally, everyone thought Ayano had already logged off. Did the streamer go to sleep? There's no sound anymore. She probably forgot to close the stream. Ah, such a cute dummy. How boring. I wanted to watch the streamer stay up late battling her dad's gym. However, no one knew that when Ayano finished reading all the content in the chat window, her entire aura suddenly changed, and the drowsiness in her eyes was completely swept away, replaced by an unprecedented brilliant light. The next moment, after switching back to the game window, she unhesitatingly controlled her game character and charged straight into the gym in front of her. Stream viewers? Wait, didn't she just say she was going to sleep? What's going on here? Chapter 98 Cynthia and Lance's Doubts, Ranking Rewards Distribution. At this very moment, all the viewers in Ayano's live stream had their eyes glued to the screen as her character rushed through the gym doors she had hesitated to enter for ages. Everyone was completely dumbfounded. What's going on? Did the streamer lose her mind? No clue, feels like something suddenly triggered her. Didn't you all say the streamer was too scared to go in? Now she's proving us wrong. Whatever. Go Ayano. Show that old-timer what it means when the new generation surpasses the old. I just came back from another stream, and knowing what's about to happen makes me want to laugh lol. Meanwhile, Cynthia had no idea that after seeing her message, Ayano had thrown all caution aside and charged into Norman's gym, determined to challenge him so she could reach Movili City's power plant tonight and trigger the Zeraora storyline as quickly as possible. She continued typing in the chat window. You need to be careful though, that storyline is extremely difficult. Under normal circumstances, it would be nearly impossible to clear. I only managed to break through thanks to an unexpected encounter with a mythical Pokémon called Victini. If you want to see Zeraora, you'd better find a way to get this Pokémon on your team. To catch it, first you need to go to the tunnel on the left side of Movili City to get the strength then. Cynthia gave Ayano a detailed rundown of how she had encountered and captured Victini. After a moment of thought, she also reminded Ayano that if she hadn't started challenging Norman's gym yet, she should definitely prepare well, because Norman's gym was incredibly tough. But after sending this string of messages, the forum showed them as unread. Apparently, Ayano had already left. Seeing this, Cynthia paused, then immediately realized what had happened. This girl probably heard about Zeraora and couldn't wait to challenge the gym. If that was the case, then all she could do was wish her luck. Hopefully, after getting crushed twice, she would come back and read the warning messages. After messaging Ayano, Cynthia didn't immediately close her computer. While sharing Zeraora's information with her, Cynthia also thought of another person. Lance. When they had originally exchanged intelligence, they both assumed that the Pokémon emerging from Ultra Wormholes would all be dangerous Ultra Beasts like Gladion had described. Now it seemed that Ultra Wormholes might contain other Pokémon as well. Whether it was today's Mega Evolution or Ultra Beasts as a special branch of Pokémon, Cynthia felt this was valuable new intelligence worth sharing. So she picked up her phone, opened the messaging app, and sent Lance both the Mega Evolution battle footage she'd recorded today and the CG scene featuring Zeraora and Regilaki. She then began typing, describing in detail everything she had witnessed. Today I met a girl on the forum who told me this Pokémon emerged from an Ultra Wormhole. After Cynthia finished her lengthy description and sent it, she shut down the computer and went to wash up. 10 minutes later, when Cynthia returned to sit on her bed and picked up her phone after finishing her routine, she saw Lance's reply. But unlike before, this time Lance's attitude seemed quite serious. I've looked at everything you sent, but honestly, Cynthia, I'm becoming increasingly suspicious about the reliability of the information this game provides. Remember what originally made us believe that this author knew everything about the real world and had access to intelligence we didn't have. It was because the game showed us things that actually exist and can be verified in the real world, like those precise submarine blueprints or that Pokémon you mentioned called Liliup. But what is he showing us now? Whether it's these so-called Ultra Beasts, Mega Evolution, or these incredible mythical Pokémon you're talking about. While I really want to get information about Ultra Wormholes from this game, these things are making me question whether they actually exist. At the end of the day, maybe this is just wishful thinking on our part. After all, it's just a game. Lance sent many messages, and Cynthia quickly scanned through them, understanding his concerns. Actually, during today's gameplay, similar doubts had crossed her mind too. She had simply chosen to follow her instincts and think deeper about these things. But now Lance's words pulled her back to reality. Right, when it comes down to it, this is just a game. Maybe the game's author did have access to certain unknown information and made surprising discoveries in certain fields, perhaps even surpassing Professor Oak's research team. But in the end, you couldn't believe everything. Seeing Lance's words, Cynthia didn't know how to respond for a moment. Then another message from Lance popped up in the chat window. Although this might be our only chance to explore clues about Ultra Wormholes. But what if none of this is real, and it's all just made up by that game author called Kairos? Cynthia, sorry, I think I need to cool down first. You know this matter can't be taken lightly for me. After saying this, Lance's profile picture went dark. He had gone offline. Seeing this, Cynthia put down her phone and sighed softly. For Lance, the Ultra Wormhole matter was like a massive boulder weighing down on his heart, ready to collapse at any moment. Wasn't it the same for her? As a champion, she understood clearly that with great power came great responsibility. Facing such a crisis, only strong people like herself could step forward and shield everyone else. Recalling what Lance had just said, Cynthia couldn't help but think again. Right, maybe everything about this game was just wishful thinking on her part. Her original intention in playing had simply been to gather information and clues about legendary Pokémon. Setting such high expectations might indeed not be a good thing. Cynthia suddenly smiled bitterly. How could she make such a mistake at her age? What she didn't know was that at the same time, thousands of miles away, in a luxurious villa in Cerulean City. So? Did you understand? Is there anything else you need me to explain again? Kairos pointed at the jumping pixels and running programs on the screen, then turned to look at the Jengar behind him. Jengar immediately showed a completely confused expression. While he had indeed learned many things about the human world during his time in the ghost world, and had heard about things called games. Now this human was telling him to help make games right away. Wasn't this difficulty a bit too high? The lengthy explanation Kairos had just rattled off was like listening to scripture. He couldn't understand any of it. This was purely making things difficult for a ghost. Jengar was about to shake his head to express his confusion, but before he could move, he felt a terrifying killing intent lock onto him from behind, making his whole body go cold. He stiffly turned his head. Sure enough, that quietly burning deep blue flame was staring straight at him with a pair of eyes. Jengar suddenly felt like his soul was about to leave his body, and quickly turned back, nodding frantically at Kairos. Jengar! Jengar! I understand, I understand. Big brother, who would dare say otherwise? Kairos wasn't stupid. He saw what was happening at a glance. He turned and smiled at the chandelier in the distance. All right, don't pressure him. This is indeed a bit difficult for him. Come on, Jengar, let me explain it to you again. Listen carefully this time. Hearing this, Jengar's whole body stiffened, and his face showed a tragic expression. Having to listen to those incomprehensible technical terms again, he would rather have Chandelure finish him off. But just then, Jengar noticed the human suddenly pause. His mouth, which was about to open, closed instead. The human stood still for quite a while before focusing his gaze back on him. How about this? It's getting late, and I have some other things to handle. Jengar, you can rest today. I'll continue teaching you tomorrow. Hearing this, Jengar immediately felt relieved, showing a moved to tears expression as if he had escaped disaster. He turned and floated toward the Pokeball, ready to return to it, but was called back by Kairos halfway there. Didn't I say you could rest? What are you doing? Now Jengar looked completely confused again. He glanced at the Pokeball, then at Kairos, puzzled. Jengar! According to what he knew of the human world, after Pokémon were captured by trainers, they had to stay in those tiny balls. Only when humans allowed it could Pokémon come out to move around. This was what he had heard from predecessors who had visited the human world, and it was the main reason most ghost-type Pokémon considered being captured by humans terrifying. Because once captured by a human trainer, it was almost no different from losing freedom. But Kairos shook his head. My Pokeballs aren't top quality. They might not be spacious or comfortable inside. Just sleep around the house like Chandelure does, whether on the sofa or the bed. Sleep wherever you like. Gengar was stunned. He hadn't expected this human to say such things. He had even tried to drain this person's soul earlier. Even though it was only a little, if he had succeeded, it would have made the human uncomfortable. Why didn't this person seem worried at all? And wasn't he afraid Gengar might sneak away in the middle of the night? Honestly, after hearing the human's description of those so-called games and the tasks he wanted him to do, Gengar had been planning to escape tonight. But now it seemed this human wasn't worried about that at all. Just as Gengar was feeling conflicted, he saw the human suddenly turn, open a cabinet, and place a large container in front of him. From what you said today, you've been wandering around without eating. You must be really hungry. Here, try this. Gengar looked at the container. It seemed to be filled with brown-colored pellets. What was this stuff? It didn't look edible. Besides, even if ghost-type Pokémon were starving, they generally wouldn't eat ordinary things like this. Eating them let them taste food, but provided almost no energy. Only the power of souls could make their bodies feel satisfied. But just as he was about to refuse, he caught a familiar scent from the container. Wait, what was that smell? Gengar instinctively grabbed the container, opened it, took out a piece, and chewed. The next moment, his eyes lit up. These brown pellets not only contained the soul power he needed, but tasted better than anything he had ever eaten. Gengar. At this moment, the starving Gengar hugged the container and devoured the contents. Watching him eat, Kairos smiled slightly. This was quite similar to how Litwick had acted back then. Eat slowly, eat as much as you want. After following me, you'll never go hungry again. Hearing this, Gengar's eating froze. A strange feeling rose in his heart. He had thought that being captured by this human was the worst thing since leaving the ghost world. He had lost freedom and was being made to work every day. But now, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Then Gengar became alert again. No, this had to be a trick meant to make him let his guard down. No way, he couldn't fall for it. When he got the chance, he would definitely escape. But before that, he would stay a couple more days and eat his fill first. On Kairos's end, he had no idea what Gengar was thinking. His attention was already focused on the line of text that had appeared before him. Ding! Today is Monday. Please note, host, this week has ended, and the game progress rankings will now distribute rewards. Current real-world rewards available for distribution: Rare Candy Gift Box, Intermediate, X5. Since this is the host's first time distributing limited-time rewards, the system provides an additional special reward: Thunderstone Premium Quality X1. Please immediately distribute rewards to players according to the progress rankings. Chapter 99: Witnessing the Legends Past, New Features, Leaderboard Rewards Distributed. Meanwhile, in the Sinnoh region. Although she had already finished washing up, after that phone conversation with Lance, Cynthia found herself unable to sleep. So she got out of bed and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window in her room, sitting down again to quietly observe everything before her. Her villa was located on a small mountain in the Sinnoh region. From this position, looking out across the view, she could see a vast plain. Under the cover of night, scattered points of light glowed in the darkness, complementing the gentle moonlight above. Those were the villages and settlements scattered across the plain, each light representing a household that hadn't yet gone to sleep. Cynthia wasn't particularly fond of bustling crowds, but whenever she stood at this floor-to-ceiling window watching those village lights, a warm feeling would well up in her heart. But at this moment, looking at those familiar lights, Cynthia's mood was somewhat complicated. The lights flickered one by one in the depths of her pupils, reflecting her somewhat dejected face on the glass before her. Garcomp. Just then, a voice broke the silent atmosphere in the room. Cynthia didn't turn around, instead continuing to gaze at the scene before her as she spoke softly. You're here, Garcomp. How was today's training? Garcomp. A figure emerged from the darkness of the room, its form gradually revealing itself. It had a shark-like dorsal fin and long tail, but its other features matched those of a dragon-type Pokémon. This was clearly a Garchomp. However, unlike other typical Garchomp, this one had a physique as majestic as a mountain, with a body size about twice that of its peers. The muscles beneath its deep blue armor looked like they contained explosive, terrifying power. Its thick tail and massive fins cut through the ground like blades, combined with the pair of huge scythes behind its arms that gleamed with cold light. The golden glow in its eyes, like molten lava, added an aura of majesty and royal presence. It could be said that just by standing there, this Pokémon's powerful aura could completely suppress other dragon-type Pokémon. If others were present, they would naturally recognize this as Cynthia's ace Pokémon, her strongest and most prideful original partner, Garchomp. Even among champion-level circles, this Garchomp was a legendary existence, having achieved countless battle accomplishments. Through countless battles, relying on its own powerful strength to fight and struggle, it had secured victory after victory for Cynthia. But at this moment, the aura emanating from this Garchomp was deliberately suppressed to its lowest level, replaced instead by careful caution and concern. Garchomp carefully and clumsily moved its steps, approaching Cynthia's side. Its golden eyes gazed at Cynthia's face as it let out a careful, questioning low growl. Growl. Cynthia turned to look at Garchomp, showing a bitter smile on her face as she reached out to gently stroke the armor covering its back. Sorry, Garchomp. I've made you worry about me again. I'm fine, it's just that recent situations might have put a bit of pressure on me, and I need to adjust. Garchomp said nothing upon hearing this, simply allowing its trainer to pet it. It naturally knew that the situation wasn't as relaxed as Cynthia made it sound. Because having stayed by her side for so long, Garchomp knew that its trainer had always been a strong person with a stable inner core, rarely showing such vulnerability. At this moment, Cynthia took a deep breath and turned her gaze back to those distant villages. Garchomp, do you know why I'm so fascinated by legendary Pokémon? Garchomp was immediately stunned by the question. As Cynthia's most powerful Pokémon, thinking and analyzing problems had never been its strongest suit, but even so, faced with its trainer's question, it thought seriously for a moment before responding. It did indeed know that its trainer loved legendary Pokémon. Wherever they were, whatever the situation, once information or clues about legendary Pokémon appeared, Cynthia would immediately begin investigating and exploring, hoping to gain something. Garchomp couldn't even remember how long this had been going on. It seemed to have started before she became champion, back when it was still a Gible. As for the specific reasons, although Garchomp was somewhat curious, it had never actively asked. From beginning to end, its mind had held only one thought: since its trainer loved legendary Pokémon, it would just work hard to become that strong. Even today, it hadn't stopped working toward that goal. This had always been one of its motivations for growing stronger. But now, faced with Cynthia's question, it was truly stumped. In the end, it could only shake its head and let out a negative growl. Cynthia didn't seem surprised by Garchomp's response. She suddenly closed her eyes, as if remembering something. Everyone in the world knows very little about legendary Pokémon. They seem to have disappeared into the river of time. Everyone says they're sleeping, gone, or have vanished. But I know that's not the case. One night when I was 6 years old, I saw with my own eyes a legend. Cynthia began to slowly narrate, past scenes flowing like a tide through her mind, reassembling before her eyes. It was a summer night from who knows how many years ago. Young Cynthia was on a small mountain in the Sinnoh region, searching for wild Pokémon. Although such behavior was indeed somewhat risky for a child that age, driven by her innate love and curiosity for Pokémon, the little girl had quietly climbed to the top of a mountain to look out over the view. She saw the lights lit up in the villages and towns across the plain. That day, people seemed to be celebrating some annual festival with lanterns and decorations, creating a particularly lively atmosphere. However, beautiful things are often the prelude to tragedy. In the midst of this celebratory atmosphere, the beautiful night sky shrouded in silver moonlight was suddenly torn apart. A burning red star blocked out the moonlight, carrying an aura of destruction as it plummeted straight toward the plain. Seeing all this and feeling that terrifying presence, the little girl felt her blood freeze for a moment. The height where she stood was above the cloud layer, so she witnessed everything firsthand. However, the people below the clouds were celebrating their once-a-year, hard-earned festival, all immersed in joy, so naturally, no one noticed this scene. Young Cynthia felt fear grip her heart, as if foreseeing an apocalyptic scene. She ran frantically down the mountain, trying to warn those people who were about to be destroyed by the meteor. But obviously, the naive girl didn't realize that even if she could make it down the mountain in time, there wouldn't be enough time, and probably no one would believe the words of such a young girl anyway. While running frantically, the girl stumbled and rolled all the way down, crashing into a tree among the dust and dirt. Bright red blood flowed from her ankle. She couldn't even stand up anymore, and could only watch in despair as that red star in the sky carried its world-destroying light and silently fell. But just as her heart was filled with despair, a scene that would remain unforgettable for the rest of her life appeared before her eyes. A cyan golden light more brilliant than a meteor tore through the heavens. The next instant, that massive figure didn't descend slowly, but like an angry divine punishment from heaven and earth, arrived in a flash from the depths of the firmament. It was clearly a giant dragon. The giant dragon became a streak of cyan green light, spiraling around the crimson meteor in rapid flight, moving so fast that only a shadow could be seen, bursting forth with vast and brilliant power. There was no earth-shattering collision, only pure, ultimate torrents of light. The green light instantly swallowed that world-ending star, like using an eraser to remove wrong words from paper, quietly and completely annihilating it before it could arrive. When the light faded, the night sky returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. Below the clouds, people continued their celebrations and toasts. Only the green starlight scattered across the sky above the clouds, and the trailing ozone burns, proved that a miracle had once descended here. That night, only one girl witnessed it all. And only she saw with her own eyes that massive figure that saved all lives and annihilated disaster. As her narration ended, Cynthia's thoughts returned from the distant past to the present moment. She withdrew her gaze and looked toward the sky outside the window, her golden eyes sparkling with determined light. Later, I secretly asked my parents about it, but they just laughed and told me such a thing was impossible, because such powerful Pokémon had long since disappeared. And at that moment, I understood, the legends everyone spoke of weren't fictional stories. They were right beside us, protecting this land, possessing the power to rewrite destiny. That night, when a streak of cyan light cut across the sky, it planted the seed in my heart to chase legends and uncover the source of that protective power. It was then that I was truly set on the path of becoming a trainer, driven to seek the truth hidden within the myths. At this point, Cynthia's black eyes suddenly became somewhat unfocused, looking downward. But after pursuing this for so many years, even though she had reached the champion position, even though she had become the youngest mythology scholar in history, her closest encounter with witnessing and exploring legendary Pokémon still remained at that summer night from her youth, never advancing a single step further. All of this even made her wonder whether everything in her memory might have been just a childhood dream. Meanwhile, in the Kanto region, Cerulean City, in a luxurious villa, Kairos looked at the notification window that had popped up before him, falling into contemplation. Without realizing it, a full week had passed since he started creating this game. No, to be precise it should be 6 days. Because this game's progress leaderboard settled according to the last day of each week, which was Sunday. And now it was past midnight on Sunday, entering Monday morning, so naturally it was settlement time, just as the system had indicated. However, Kairos really hadn't expected that for the first settlement, the system would give him an additional reward item. Probably worried that he wouldn't have any decent rewards to give out during the first settlement. While thinking, Kairos noticed that a golden stone had somehow appeared in his left hand. The stone was only half the size of his palm, but its surface was constantly shooting out prominent golden electrical currents, and the crystal surface was smooth and lustrous. Clearly this was indeed a high-quality thunderstone. According to the memories in Kairos's mind, just this one thunderstone could probably sell for 500,000 or 600,000 poke dollars on the market, and it would likely be in a situation where demand exceeded supply, since this kind of thing couldn't just be bought with money and was quite rare in nature. However, for the current Kairos, he had long stopped caring about such small amounts of money. His Pokémon also didn't need electric-type resources, he didn't have any now, and probably wouldn't in the future either. Because electric-type Pokémon near Cerulean City were frighteningly scarce, practically non-existent. Geographically speaking, the electric-type Pokémon in the Kanto region were basically all concentrated in the northern areas. So, might as well treat this as a reward and give it to a player. But speaking of which, this was his first in-game progress leaderboard reward settlement, so he had to handle it properly. According to the in-game announcement, the top 3 players on the progress leaderboard would all receive rewards. Currently, he had 5 boxes of rare candy gift boxes for distribution, plus 1 high-quality thunderstone. So, how should he reasonably distribute these among those players? While thinking, Kairos opened the game system on his phone to check the current leaderboard data. As he expected, the top 3 players from first to third were Cynthia, Iono, and Lance, respectively. Soon, Kairos had a plan in mind. Players with higher rankings should naturally receive more generous rewards. As a professional game developer, he understood this basic principle. In that case, as first place, Cynthia would get 2 boxes of rare candy, while Iono and Lance would each get 1 box. As second place, Iono would additionally receive that high-quality Thunderstone. After all, she was an electric-type gym leader, and even if she didn't have Pokémon that needed Thunderstones to evolve, the abundant electric-type energy contained in this Thunderstone should be enough to provide some improvement for her Pokémon. This way, he could differentiate the reward levels for the top 3 places, and the last remaining box of rare candy would serve as a lucky prize, randomly distributed to one of the remaining tens of thousands of players. This would both motivate players to compete for rankings while also taking care of ordinary players. After making these arrangements, Kairos directly communicated his ideas to the system and clicked the confirm button. The next moment, the Thunderstone in his hand and the 5 rare candy gift boxes in the cabinet instantly disappeared, obviously sent by the system to the corresponding players' locations. The next moment, a notification also popped up before Kairos's eyes. Ding! Congratulations, host! You have completed the achievement task, first distribution of player leaderboard rewards in the real world. Task reward, emotion point exchange function, player side. With the system's notification sound, a completely new panel appeared before Kairos. Looking closely, Kairos discovered this was actually something like a game store function. By using emotion points, he could exchange for corresponding real-world items here. And the prices looked quite reasonable. For example, the high-quality Thunderstone he had just obtained only required 200 points in the store. Not only that, besides common items like evolution stones, Pokeballs, and healing medicines, there were special items that didn't exist in the real world and only existed in games, such as EXP, Share, Rare Candy, and even TMS. Kairos knew that any of these items would probably cause a sensation if brought to the real world, just like those rare candy gift boxes he had just sent out. But for Kairos, there was one somewhat regrettable point. In the lower left corner of the store was a line of text that clearly explained why there were 3 red words player side behind this exchange panel. Please note, host, that items currently exchanged using emotion points can only be given to in-game players as legitimate rewards for leaderboards, missions, events, etc. The host cannot directly use these items or use them for other purposes. After witnessing the powerful effects of those rare candy boxes firsthand, it would be unrealistic to say Kairos wasn't tempted by these in-game items. After all, those things had directly boosted his beginner-level Litwick to Elite 4 level, which would be hard for any normal person to remain calm about. But thinking it over, Kairos hadn't planned to become a trainer from the beginning anyway. Now that Chandelure had Elite 4 level strength, self-protection was already sufficient, so let it be. Stay chill, stay chill. Don't forget the original intention. Becoming a trainer wasn't really necessary, better to just make games every day and laze around at home. Anyway, he'd naturally have new Pokémon come to him even while lying around. Now he had 2 ghost-type Pokémon at home, which was already lively enough. He took a deep breath and quickly adjusted his mindset. Setting that aside, this exchange function was purely beneficial for him. When he distributed leaderboard rewards earlier, Kairos had been wondering what he'd do if he didn't get any items to give as rewards during the next week, since the leaderboard settled weekly. He couldn't just shortchange players' rewards, right? That would make him a terrible game developer. And now this store interface perfectly solved that problem. With this in mind, Kairos continued observing this new store panel interface. Just as he had judged before, items that already existed in the real world like Premium Thunderstones, Great Balls, and Ultra Balls didn't require very high point costs. A Great Ball worth over 10,000 Poke Dollars in the real world only needed about a dozen emotion points to exchange here. But Kairos soon discovered that special items that couldn't possibly exist in the real world, like rare candy gift boxes and EXP Share, had exponentially higher exchange prices. For example, the intermediate rare candy gift boxes he had just sent out required a full 780 emotion points each to exchange. And advanced ones required 2,000 points. Items like the EXP Share, which were like cheats in the original games, required a whopping 15,000 emotion points. However, Kairos didn't find this particularly unacceptable. After all, he had seen the effects of these items with his own eyes. 5 boxes of intermediate rare candy gift boxes could directly boost a low-level Pokémon to Elite 4 level. And these rare candies would adjust their specific effects based on the Pokémon's current level, meaning Elite 4 level Pokémon would likely have a chance to break through to champion level with just one box. Under such circumstances, could 800 emotion points really be considered expensive? Obviously not. As for those advanced candies costing 2000 points per box, Kairos really couldn't imagine how powerful their effects could be. Maybe he should try giving one to first place next leaderboard distribution? Anyway, his daily emotion point harvest was continuously increasing with the growing player base, so he wasn't as tight on resources as he had been initially. While thinking, Kairos suddenly remembered something and began looking through the exchange interface again, scrolling down quickly. Super Rod, Escape Rope, Revival Herbs one after another, items that couldn't possibly exist in reality appeared before Kairos's eyes. However, he didn't stop browsing, instead speeding up. Finally, when a familiar item flashed before his eyes, his entire body suddenly froze, and his eyes burst with excited light. His gaze stopped on a square box. At the very top of the box was engraved a spiral symbol radiating 7-colored light. Kairos would recognize this symbol even if it turned to ash. Because this was the iconic symbol of Mega Evolution. Special item, Mega Evolution Gift Box. Required exchange points, 10,000 points. Description: when a player obtains and opens this gift box, the box will automatically generate the corresponding Megastone for any Pokémon in their team, plus 1 intermediate quality keystone. Please note, when the player opening the gift box does not have any Pokémon capable of Mega Evolution in their team, a Megastone will be randomly generated. Before sending this gift box to a player, the host can check that player's real-world team's Pokémon status to determine whether to give the gift box. Looking at this string of information prompts, Kairos felt his heartbeat quicken. He had originally just been trying his luck, never expecting there would actually be Megastones for sale in this store. Although he couldn't use the Megastones himself after buying them, giving them to players would still benefit him. Speaking of which, this was one of the main reasons why Kairos didn't feel too bad about not being able to use the items from the store himself. According to the system's explanation, he didn't need to be limited to only things he created, causing emotional fluctuations in others to gain emotion points. Like when he played Battle Road before, any action that caused emotional fluctuations in anyone could earn points. So the act of distributing leaderboard rewards in the game would naturally count as long as it made players feel emotional changes. And once players experienced the power of Mega Evolution in the game and learned about this special mechanism, they definitely wouldn't believe it was real. After all, in the real world, this form of evolution was simply too incredible. But if they actually received a Megastone sent from the game, and relied on the Megastone and Keystone given by the game to complete evolution, the emotional fluctuations players would experience at that moment were unimaginable. And if someone like Cynthia or Iono, key figures who had already unlocked the emotion point multiplier limit, got a Megastone, Kairos wasn't sure if he'd be able to earn back the 5,000 emotion point cost just from that. Well, breaking even might be difficult, but it definitely wouldn't be a complete loss. After all, there was still something called emotion threshold levels. If Cynthia got a Mega Evolution gift box, such a strong impact might even break through the 3rd tier emotion threshold. With this thought, Kairos looked at his remaining emotion points, then at the 10,000 point Megastone gift box, gritted his teeth, and directly chose to purchase one box. A notification quickly popped up before his eyes. Ding! Congratulations, host! You have successfully exchanged Mega Evolution Stone Gift Box X1. Please note that this item is a limited exchange product. Remaining exchanges this week, 1/2. Seeing this notification, Kairos raised an eyebrow slightly. Apparently, there were limits to exchanging this item, only 2 boxes could be exchanged per week, maximum. But this quota was already sufficient, since he really couldn't afford that many emotion points to exchange for such expensive boxes anyway. Exchanging this one box today was mainly to test whether it could directly break through Cynthia's 3rd tier emotion threshold, thereby obtaining that special reward. Kairos hadn't forgotten the system's previous hint: if Cynthia's emotion threshold reached the 3rd tier, he could obtain a special ability related to Cynthia, plus substantial rewards. This would definitely be worth the price. At this moment, while Kairos was thinking, a heavy gift box made of unknown metal had already appeared in his hands. This box looked full of luxury and quality just at first glance, clearly made with expensive materials. The Mega Evolution super symbol carved on its top was flashing with dazzling, colorful light, making anyone who saw it feel their heart flutter. Kairos tried to open the box, but the next moment, he found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get the box open. It seemed the system really wasn't lying to him. These items exchanged from the player store could only be distributed to players as rewards. At this moment, Kairos still felt a little regret, since his current team only had Jengar and Chandelure. If he could open it himself, he would definitely get Jengar's Mega Stone. The power of Mega Jengar was naturally beyond question. It could be considered first-tier strength among the earliest batch of Mega Evolution Pokémon. As for Chandelure, although it currently didn't have a Mega Evolution form, Kairos had heard before his transmigration that in the next game Nintendo would release, Chandelure would get its own Mega Evolution form. This meant that in the real world, it should also have the possibility of Mega Evolution. He just didn't know if he'd have a chance to get its Mega Stone later. Thinking this, Kairos shook his head slightly and directly opened the system panel, selected the leaderboard reward distribution option, and directly sent the Mega Gift Box in his hands as a reward to Cynthia. As the gift box disappeared from Kairos's hands, he breathed a slight sigh of relief. He wondered if this thing would be impactful enough for Cynthia to break through the third-tier emotion threshold. But it should be fine, right? Speaking of which, after getting the gift box, Kairos hadn't used the system function to check Cynthia's current team configuration. Because he clearly knew that Cynthia's team definitely had a Pokémon capable of Mega Evolution. That would be Garchomp. In the games, Mega Garchomp became the most regrettable of all Mega Evolution Pokémon due to the mind-boggling design of actually losing 10 speed points after evolution. This situation even led many Garchomp fans to try directly confronting the designers of Garchomp's Mega Evolution at Pokémon game conventions. But Kairos knew that in the real world, such situations wouldn't occur. With Cynthia's champion-level Garchomp, after Mega Evolution, could it directly break through to Legendary tier level? With this thought, Kairos rubbed his hands together, feeling somewhat expectant as he sat on the bedside, quietly waiting for the system's feedback. Meanwhile, in the Sinnoh region, after Cynthia finished her story, Garchomp stood frozen in place. It hadn't expected that its trainer's pursuit of everything related to legendary Pokémon had such a reason. Previously, it had always thought this was all due to Cynthia's pursuit of power, that she wanted to learn from those legendary Pokémon's strength to improve herself. Now it seemed its viewpoint was only half correct. Cynthia did indeed want to become powerful, but her reason for doing so was to be able to possess the power to reverse fate and protect everything, like that green figure she had seen that night. While Garchomp was lost in thought, Cynthia seemed to have recovered from the emotional tide just now. She stood up from the window and patted Garchomp's shoulder again, giving it a hug. "Thank you, Garchomp. All this way, I'm glad you've always been by my side." Roar. Garchomp responded with a low growl, then spoke up again. "Roar, roar. Although I support you too, I think you don't need to put so much pressure on yourself. We've already done our best, haven't we?" Cynthia understood Garchomp's words and couldn't help but pause. Her reason for pursuing legendary Pokémon wasn't just because of what she had witnessed that night, that kind of powerful force had deeply attracted her. And since reaching the champion level, she had been trying to pursue that higher realm, the power level that only legendary Pokémon could reach. However, whether among the world's existing powerful trainers or in past human records, there had never been a trainer who reached that legendary realm. For this, Cynthia had made many efforts, but soon she discovered that she and her Pokémon were still some distance away from even the most elite tier of champion level, let alone that legendary realm. Even though she was already one of the strongest trainers in the world, the reality was such that she had to accept this fact. Throughout this journey to championship, whether in terms of effort, resources, or opportunities, Cynthia felt she had already reached her limits. Garchomp was the same. Since it was still a Gible, its daily training time had never been less than 10 hours, basically spending all time except sleep on training. Even now, having become a champion-level Pokémon, this remained unchanged. The fierce battles they had experienced together were countless, constantly honing themselves through numerous high-intensity battles. But even so, reality still dealt them a heavy blow. High-tier champion level seemed to be the limit they could currently reach. And above high-tier champion level, the champion peak level that had been touched by people in historical records and was now reached by a few of the world's strongest, remained frustratingly out of reach. At least in the short term breaking through was impossible. Although Cynthia was still young now, and with her age, breaking through to that level was just a matter of time. But if she couldn't even touch the extreme level of champion peak now, then how could she reach that legendary realm in the future? If the ultra wormhole situation was an unsolvable knot in Lance's heart. Unable to reach the level of peak champion, with the path to legendary tier power remaining forever out of reach, a hidden barrier resided deep within Cynthia's heart. But at this moment, listening to Garchomp's words, Cynthia gradually came to her senses. Yes, was she being too hasty? Although the ultra wormhole crisis existed, there was still plenty of time for everyone to prepare. She hadn't even begun trying to touch that legendary realm, so why was she drawing conclusions so early? Although everything she had seen in this game had reawakened the memories in her heart, making her urgently want to become stronger. But as long as she stayed on the path and gave her all, that was actually enough. With this thought, she felt somewhat lighter, as if she had understood something. However, just as Cynthia was thinking, a notification window appeared unexpectedly before her eyes. Please note, player Strawberry Ice Cream, last week's leaderboard has been settled. Your rewards are as follows: Rare Candy Gift Box, Intermediate, X5. Rewards will be distributed shortly. Please step back 2 steps. Chapter 100 Game Rewards Distributed, The Legend is Real. Looking at the sudden string of information prompts that appeared before her, Cynthia couldn't help but be startled. She clearly realized that all these red text messages were floating in midair right in front of her, like some kind of illusion. Having seen much of the world in her lifetime, after her initial surprise, her first reaction was to nod at Garchomp while she herself began looking around. Only Psychic-type Pokémon could create text that appeared in front of her like this out of thin air. Even if a Psychic-type Pokémon wanted to create such text out of nowhere, its main body would definitely have to be somewhere not too far from her. With Garchomp's abilities, he would certainly be able to sense the opponent's deliberately hidden presence. After all, energy sensing was one of her Garchomp's most powerful abilities, and also the reason she had won countless battles. Cynthia had discovered he possessed this extraordinary talent even when he was still a Gible. But the next moment, Cynthia noticed that, facing her gaze and instructions, Garchomp's face showed a rare, confused expression. Having worked together with Cynthia for so long, Garchomp naturally knew that this look from Cynthia meant for him to enter alert mode and check for any powerful Pokémon that might exist nearby. But at this moment, he didn't sense any threat in the surrounding area. Logically speaking, his sensitivity to energy should far exceed that of Cynthia as a human. So what exactly was wrong with Cynthia? At this moment, Cynthia had also noticed that something was off with Garchomp's state. She immediately looked in the direction of Garchomp's gaze and found that his line of sight was indeed focused on her. This wouldn't normally be strange, but Cynthia noticed that Garchomp seemed to completely not see the red text currently appearing in front of her. Instead, his gaze went straight through the position where they were located and landed on her. At this moment, Cynthia also realized something was wrong. She pointed at the red text in front of her and spoke to Garchomp. You can't see these. Upon hearing this, the bewildered expression on Garchomp's face became even more pronounced. He really didn't understand what was going on with his trainer right now. There was clearly nothing in front of Cynthia at all. After receiving Garchomp's negative response, Cynthia was stunned again. Since Garchomp had indicated there were no ghost-type Pokémon in the vicinity, it meant the text in front of her wasn't created by some powerful ghost-type Pokémon hiding in the shadows, as she had initially thought. And at this moment, when Cynthia began to seriously look at those texts, she suddenly realized something. Strawberry Ice Cream? Wasn't this exactly her player name in that game called Pokémon Emerald? End game leaderboard reward settlement? Could it be that these prompts came from the game she had been playing? Cynthia immediately went to the computer desk and checked her computer's main unit. But that wasn't right, her computer was indeed in a powered-off state. Had gaming technology really advanced to the point where it could project text and images out of thin air like this? Although Cynthia didn't know much about computer technology, she felt that current technology probably hadn't reached that level yet. At this moment, she was surprised by the text that had appeared out of nowhere before her, and hadn't particularly focused on or paid attention to the rewards the game mentioned. After all, game leaderboard rewards would correspond to in-game items, so there wasn't anything particularly noteworthy about them. In comparison, why these texts had suddenly appeared before her was more worth investigating. While Cynthia was thinking rapidly, she saw that prompt flash again before her. Rewards are about to be distributed. Please step back 2 steps. Repeat, your reward is Rare Candy Gift Box, Intermediate, X2. Do you wish to claim and cash out immediately? Cash out. Seeing this word, it was as if a thunderbolt suddenly exploded in Cynthia's mind. She finally understood why this line of text was asking her to step back 2 steps. Could it be that the rewards being distributed were items from the real world? But how was this possible? Where would something like rare candy exist in the real world? Although she felt it was incredibly bizarre and unbelievable, Cynthia's body still instinctively stepped back 2 steps according to the prompt before her. Just then, a golden vortex suddenly condensed and appeared in front of her. This time, Garcomp also noticed the anomaly in front of Cynthia. His golden pupils suddenly contracted, and he flew forward, blazing red light erupting from both claws as he positioned himself in front of Cynthia and slashed fiercely toward that vortex. But the moment his champion-level Pokémon's energy wave, carrying infinite power, hit the golden vortex, it disappeared into thin air like evaporating water vapor, leaving no trace. Meanwhile, the golden vortex seemed completely unaffected and continued rotating and expanding. The strange object before her made Cynthia's heart tremble. She immediately stretched out a hand to block Garcomp. "Don't move recklessly!" Roar! Garcomp let out a threatening growl from his throat, but still followed Cynthia's command, standing behind her with his golden eyes locked tightly on that golden vortex, as if ready to battle at any moment. The instant this vortex appeared, he felt a mighty force coming from the other side. Cynthia stared at that vortex with rapid breathing, countless thoughts emerging and surging in her mind, ultimately forming the same question. Could the game rewards mentioned in that text actually be real? And in the next instant, the golden vortex suddenly stopped expanding in mid-air, and a brilliant light flickering with golden dots flew out from within the vortex, hovering in front of Cynthia. The next moment, the vortex disappeared, leaving only a line of red text that refreshed before her eyes. Your leaderboard tier reward has been delivered. Thank you for your gameplay and experience. Please note, all rewards obtained from this game can only be used by you personally and cannot be sold, gifted, or used for any other purposes. Violating this rule will result in reward confiscation. Finally, we hope you can continue to strive forward and go further on your journey in Pokémon Emerald. The red text flickered once and then disappeared directly from before Cynthia's eyes. And at this moment, only that golden light orb, continuously emanating tiny sparkles, remained in front of her. Cynthia didn't even notice that her heartbeat had begun to quicken, all her attention was focused on the object before her. After a brief moment of hesitation, she finally extended one hand and carefully, cautiously touched the light orb. The instant she made contact with the light orb, countless golden light particles immediately burst forth like a meteor shower across the sky, transforming into brilliant streaks of light that quickly dispersed throughout the room. What appeared in Cynthia's hands were 2 exquisitely packaged gift boxes, each about the size of a basketball. Cynthia's eyes couldn't help but widen dramatically. Could this really be those so-called rare candy gift boxes? Rewards from the game appearing in reality? But how was this possible? Even she felt that the emotions in her heart could no longer be calmed at this moment, leaving only shock. For several seconds, Cynthia remained in this state before snapping back to reality, her gaze falling on the 2 boxes before her. She quickly walked to the table, selected one box and opened it, discovering that inside were 5 deep blue candies that looked completely ordinary. No dazzling light emanated from them, nor were there any extraordinary phenomena. No matter how you looked at them, they seemed like nothing more than ordinary candies. However, Cynthia didn't dare underestimate them at this moment. Her mind began racing with thoughts once again. Even when she had seen the vortex earlier, she still hadn't believed that the so-called rare candy that could directly make Pokémon stronger could actually appear in reality. But since this game could distribute rewards through thin air, what if these candies really did have such effects? Just as Cynthia was thinking rapidly, Garcomp beside her seemed to sense something and moved closer. His golden eyes stared intently at the 5 deep blue candies on Cynthia's table, unable to look away. As a champion-level Pokémon, he naturally possessed extremely sensitive perception of energy. At this moment, he could only feel that these candies contained energy as vast and endless as ocean waves, deeply attracting every cell in his body, making his very soul restless and agitated. What kind of powerful and terrifying force was this? It was even more incredible than any top-tier resource he had used in his lifetime. Comparing those things to these candies was like comparing the bright moon in the sky to a tiny firefly on the ground. Cynthia clearly noticed Garcomp's abnormal behavior and spoke softly. "You want to try it?" Garcomp nodded, then shook his head. Although the temptation of what lay before him was incredibly strong, the scene that had appeared when this thing manifested forced him to choose caution. Having experienced so much in his life and standing at such a high position, he had long since become a mature Pokémon, so even in the face of such tremendous temptation, he could maintain rational thinking. Cynthia was naturally the same way. After thinking briefly, she suddenly gestured toward a certain direction not far away. Spiritomb. The next moment, a cold, sinister aura instantly swept through the entire room. The air became cold and viscous, as if inhaling a bucket of ice water, and the ground began to shake violently. At Cynthia's feet, a vague black shadow rushed from far to near, stopping at her feet before solidifying and appearing beside her. It was a massive wedge stone covered with eerie markings that suddenly split open. From deep within the crack, thick, ink-like purple-black mist gushed forth, ultimately forming a huge, menacing ghostly figure. Dozens of ghostly green and dark purple soul flames rotated around his body, with terrifying pressure emanating from his form. If Garchomp's aura carried an inviolable kingly dignity, then this Pokémon's aura was incredibly sinister and terrifying, making one's hair stand on end and filling their heart with endless fear. This Pokémon was unmistakably one of Cynthia's aces, Spiritomb. He too, like Garchomp, was a champion-level powerhouse. But at this moment, this sinister and terrifying Pokémon raised his head to look at Cynthia, and those eerie, ghostly green flames formed the shape of a smile on his face. Spiritomb, Ovo. Cynthia seemed long accustomed to such scenes. Although her Spiritomb looked terrifying, he was actually a very cute Pokémon at heart. Although the word cute didn't seem to go with ghost-type Pokémon, that was simply the truth. At this moment, she reached out her hand and gently stroked above his flames, then pointed to the 5 candies in front of her. Spiritomb, help me out. Check if there are any harmful components in these things. Make sure to examine them carefully. Woo! Spiritomb swayed his body, and countless terrifying and sinister wails burst forth from within his form, echoing through the air. At this moment, he transformed once again into a mass of black shadow that dispersed on the ground, rushing up the table leg all the way to the tabletop, where he reconstituted his body. Spiritomb carefully examined the 5 delicate candies with his eyes, and after several seconds, he turned his head toward Cynthia and shook it. Woo! No problems. Cynthia extended a hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Although her Spiritomb was originally a ghost and dark-type Pokémon, like Garchomp, he also possessed his own unique ability, that is, he had incredibly exaggerated talent in poison-type attributes, even far surpassing her team's Rose Raid, who should theoretically be the most skilled with poison types. After discovering this, Cynthia naturally didn't waste Spiritomb's talent, instead continuously refining and training it, ultimately making Spiritomb a Pokémon with considerable expertise in poison attributes. Whether there were toxins or harmful substances in a candy like this, Spiritomb only needed to come over and sniff to make a direct judgment. And since Spiritomb had already said these candies were fine, should she let Garchomp try them? Just as Cynthia was hesitating internally, she saw Spiritomb on the table seem to sense something. His deep black body instantly expanded, transforming into a giant mouth that directly swallowed all 5 candies on the table. This sudden scene instantly panicked Cynthia. Oh no! She had forgotten that her Spiritomb was normally the gluttonous type. Once he encountered something he wanted to eat, he would directly start devouring it. But now that the candies had entered Spiritomb's belly, there was nothing more to be said. Cynthia could only clench her hands tightly and focus her gaze on Spiritomb's body, watching him closely and observing his condition. 1 second passed. 2 seconds passed. 5 seconds passed. Aside from showing an expression of lingering satisfaction after eating something delicious, Spiritomb showed no other changes. Cynthia's anxious heart finally settled down, but at the same time, a barely perceptible disappointment also welled up in her heart. So these really were just ordinary candies after all? That made sense. How could something like rare candy possibly exist in this world? But just as this thought emerged in Cynthia's mind, a sudden change occurred. Boom! A deep humming sound that came not from air vibrations, but from Spiritomb's soul trembling, spread outward. With Spiritomb as the center, a visible deep purple-black energy wave erupted like a shockwave with the profundity of an abyss. This wave wasn't violent, yet carried a suffocatingly heavy texture, as if the surrounding space had frozen due to this immense power. Cynthia's pupils suddenly contracted. She instinctively stepped back half a step, not out of fear, but due to the instinctive reaction brought by the pure power impact before her. She could clearly feel that the already unfathomable energy within Spiritomb was transforming and sublimating at a terrifying speed. This scene and sensation, she would never mistake it. This was the change that only occurred when champion-level Pokémon broke through. But, how was this possible? Spiritomb had joined the team much later than Garchomp. Although he had been training very hard, his strength lagged behind Garchomp by a small tier. Just half a year ago, Spiritomb had barely broken through to the high champion level, gaining qualification to advance toward the top tier, but actually, Garchomp had already achieved this 3 years ago. But now he had just eaten a few candies and was about to complete a breakthrough. And moreover, a breakthrough to the champion peak level that she and Garchomp had always been pursuing. As Cynthia found it hard to believe, Spiritomb's changes seemed far from over. The deep purple wedge stone at his core erupted with unprecedented brilliant light once more. No longer the profound purple light, but transformed into an almost liquid, deep dark gold. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, it radiated even more powerful energy ripples outward. The black mist that had originally only been slowly writhing around Spiritomb's body was now completely boiling. It was no longer mist, but had condensed into clearer, more solid vengeful spirit phantoms that seemed to possess substance. Each phantom had its own face, twisting and changing, emitting silent shrieks, releasing pressure that increased exponentially, causing the air to condense into tiny black distorted light points. After the phantoms appeared, the space around Spiritomb seemed to form a unique domain where light was twisted and devoured, and temperature plummeted drastically. Even Garchomp beside Cynthia instinctively stepped back when observing those black mists, feeling his entire body filled with instinctive wariness in the face of danger. Watching this scene before her, Cynthia's eyes suddenly blazed with light. Incredible, this is too incredible. Spiritomb at this moment had indeed broken through the high champion level and stepped into the peak tier. But it was far from just that. As a champion level trainer, Cynthia naturally knew the condition of each of her Pokémon like the back of her hand. For example, Garchomp excelled at grasping the flow of energy in the air, thereby sensing the location of energy bodies. He was very sensitive to energy of any type and intensity. Besides possessing talent in poison attributes, Spiritomb's other development direction and specialty was his ability pressure. Under normal circumstances, the effect that the pressure ability could achieve was to nullify the opponent's Pokémon's use of recovery items and berries during battle. In most situations, this ability was quite useless, since official Pokémon battles explicitly prohibited the use of such recovery items and berries during combat. And if it was in wild battles, this ability was even more so. Wild Pokémon had even less possibility of using recovery items. Speaking of which, Cynthia had originally discovered that Spiritomb possessed this ability and its corresponding effects during a battle against Team Rocket members, when that Team Rocket soldier had tried to use a black potion to restore his Pokémon's stamina, but the recovery light brought by the potion was suppressed by the radiance erupting from Spiritomb's body. After that, Cynthia had taken Spiritomb to Professor Oak's place to conduct research on this ability that Spiritomb possessed, finally determining the effect of the pressure ability. It was precisely because of this research trip that Cynthia discovered Spiritomb's ability seemed to have some room for improvement. For example, the black mist around him could condense and take shape in its normal state, forming a domain that subjected Pokémon entering it to intimidation-like effects. However, this was much more powerful than the intimidation brought by ordinary champion Pokémon, sometimes even capable of causing weak Pokémon to fall into a state of paralysis and stupor. After discovering this, Cynthia had been continuously developing and training Spiritomb's abilities in this area. Now, as a champion-level Pokémon, he could already externalize his pressure ability at crucial moments, forming a domain to suppress opponents' battle capabilities. But just now, the domain formed by the mist and ghosts from Spiritomb's body was many times more powerful than his previous state, even exceeding Cynthia's original expectations for this ability. More importantly, due to her yearning for the champion peak level, Cynthia had once consulted a senior named Red, or rather, a trainer who, though younger than her in age, possessed champion peak level strength. During that exchange, he had clearly mentioned that judging whether a Pokémon's level had reached the champion level limit depended on whether a certain special ability of theirs had undergone qualitative change and breakthrough. This breakthrough was natural, occurring because the energy within the Pokémon had reached an unprecedented extreme height. Once promoted to champion peak level, it would directly transform like evolution. It was also the most obvious sign of whether a Pokémon had reached the champion peak level. And the domain that Spiritomb had just displayed completely matched this description. Such a change could only mean one thing. Spiritomb now possessed champion peak level strength. And all of this was simply because of that small box of candies that had appeared before her. And moreover, it was just one box. These so-called rare candies were actually real. At this moment, Cynthia felt emotions like a tidal wave flooding into her mind. All her previous doubts and questions about everything in the game vanished in this instant, replaced by a shock as if she had witnessed the divine. If even the most incredible item in this game, the rare candy, was real and had actually appeared before her eyes, directly elevating Spiritomb to champion peak level strength. Then didn't that mean those legendary Pokémon, those mythical creatures, and that so-called mega evolution she had seen in the game, were all real too? A massive dizziness swept through Cynthia's mind. For a moment, she felt like she had lost all ability to perceive anything. In her daze, only a vague green dragon phantom seemed to condense and appear in the depths of her consciousness. Legends were not fiction. At the same time, in the Paldea region, Ayano was sitting in front of her computer screen. As the last Pokémon in her team fell, she skillfully clicked the exit button in the upper right corner to restart the game. After witnessing everything about Zeraora just now, she had launched a fierce attack on Norman's gym without hesitation. However, the facts proved that Norman's gym was far more challenging than any gym she had faced before. In just these 10+ minutes, she had already restarted several times. The good news was that these restarts weren't meaningless. Ayano had also figured out the basic configuration of several Pokémon in Norman's team. Currently, the strongest seemed to be that Slaking. Although affected by the Truant ability, it could only act every other turn, but each Giga Impact dealt incredibly high damage. None of the Pokémon in her team could withstand it. Besides this Slaking, that Pokémon called Ndidi was also quite troublesome. With her entire team currently consisting of Electric-type Pokémon, the Electric Terrain skill provided a considerable boost to her team's combat power. But this Ndidi possessed the Psychic Surge ability that could instantly create Psychic Terrain upon entering, overriding the Electric Terrain that Ayano needed to spend a turn to activate. This was quite problematic. Because, judging from the other Pokémon in Norman's team, without Electric Terrain's boost, this gym battle would only become even more difficult for Ayano. However, after going through so many tough battles before, Ayano was no longer the newbie who had just started the game and got beaten senseless by various gym leaders. At this moment, sitting at her desk, she was calmly thinking and considering how to deal with those Pokémon. After a brief silence, she earnestly began explaining her strategy to the viewers in her live stream. Slaking is actually the easiest to handle. He doesn't seem to be carrying any items that can cure status conditions, so I just need to use Protect when he enters to get through that turn, then inflict paralysis. According to this game's mechanics, if Protect is used in a battle, the success rate keeps decreasing. If used for 2 consecutive turns, there's a high chance of failure. But combined with paralysis control, it can greatly reduce Slaking's chances to act. As for that Ndidi, Norman usually switches her in during the turn when Slaking can't act to compete for terrain control. We just need to predict this and use Electric Terrain on the first turn when Slaking can't move to reclaim the field. After all, her terrain activates the moment she enters, so we'll activate our terrain later. So the early strategy stays the same. When we see Slaking, Pikachu uses Protect first, then sets up terrain. After trading with Ndidi, when facing Slaking again, find a chance to inflict paralysis. Listening to Ayano's explanation, the viewers in the live stream felt very gratified, like proud parents finally seeing their daughter grow up. Lines of comments immediately refreshed. Is this what practice makes perfect looks like? The streamer's gotten experienced from being imprisoned so much. I still miss the old streamer who just got steamrolled by gym leaders and could only silently blush. Haha, the person above just can't stand seeing the streamer succeed. Don't forget, she's an official gym leader after all. It makes sense she'd adapt to this hardcore, high-difficulty game quickly. Could the streamer actually clear Norman's gym in 2 hours today? Go for it, streamer. I'll sleep when you beat it. While the chat was buzzing with discussion, Ayano finished organizing her battle strategy and guided her character back into Norman's room, preparing to start another challenge. That's all I can think of for now. Even if I don't win, I'll definitely get further than last time. Alright, here we go. But just at that moment, something completely unexpected happened. Red text in a golden notification box suddenly appeared out of nowhere in front of her computer screen. Player Ayano, please note, this week's game progress leaderboard rewards have been finalized. Your rewards are, Rare Candy Gift Box, Ultimate, X1, High Quality Thunderstone X1. Do you choose to claim the corresponding rewards now, or temporarily store them in the game warehouse? The series of prompts before her startled Ayano. She couldn't help rubbing her eyes, wondering if she was hallucinating. Game rewards? Rare candy gift box? High-grade thunderstone? What were these things? Wait, second place weekly rewards on the progress leaderboard. Could these be prompts from within the game? How did the game's notification boxes end up floating in front of her? She checked repeatedly and confirmed that those texts and notification boxes were indeed floating in mid-air before her, not on her computer screen. Just as she was pondering, the prompts that had appeared suddenly disappeared. But this actually made Ayano panic a bit more. She'd heard that staying up late was bad for your health. She hadn't stayed up too long and started hallucinating, had she? Meanwhile, viewers in the live stream had also noticed her strange expression and began asking questions. What's wrong with the streamer? Why does she suddenly look so pale? Damn, the streamer's face has gone white. Did she overdo it with the all-nighter and collapse? Yes, streamer, why don't you go rest? It's fine to challenge the gym tomorrow. You've already made great progress in the game today, and you're still second on the leaderboard. There's no need to rush, your health is most important. Looking at the stream of messages before her, Ayano took a deep breath and checked how her body was feeling. She had been playing games all day and was indeed a bit tired. But it shouldn't be to the point of hallucinating, right? After thinking for a moment, she rubbed her eyes and nodded to the viewers in her live stream. All right, since that's the case, I'll go rest first. See you all tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we can clear this gym together. After saying goodbye, she directly closed the game window and live stream. However, when she looked up, she froze completely the next moment, because that golden notification box along with the red text appeared before her eyes once again. Not only that, this time the text even flashed and came with a sound. Player has not selected the store reward option. Please step back 2 steps. Rewards are about to be distributed. As this notification sound, identical to the one in the game, rang out, a golden vortex suddenly condensed and appeared before Ayano's eyes, forcing her to stumble back 2 steps. After finally steadying herself, Ayano pinched her thigh hard. When she felt the clear pain, she finally confirmed one thing. So, this wasn't a hallucination. The next moment, the vortex stopped expanding, and 2 crimson light orbs dropped directly out of the vortex. Ayano's gaze locked tightly onto those 2 crimson lights. At the same time, a Pokémon from one of the Pokeballs at her waist directly emerged as a red light and flew out. It was a Pokémon that looked like a frog doll, with white smiley face patterns on its belly, short legs and large eyes, smooth skin and an indescribably cute and honest appearance. This Pokémon was Ayano's signature partner, and also a Pokémon native to the Paldea region, Bellibolt. However, at this moment, this Pokémon was watching the 2 crimson lights across from Ayano with hostile eyes. Brilliant golden electrical current suddenly burst from his body, striking directly at those 2 light orbs. But the next moment, when the golden current hit the light orbs, it simply dissipated without seeming to affect the orbs at all. Seeing this, after a brief moment of confusion, Bellibolt began gathering even more intense electrical current, preparing to attack those 2 vortexes again. However, his actions were directly stopped by Ayano. Bellibolt, stop! Bellibolt paused, and the electrical current gathered on his body finally dissipated somewhat. He turned to look at Ayano and called out a few times in confusion. Bellibolt! Ayano's gaze remained fixed on the vortex as she spoke directly to Bellibolt. This thing probably isn't threatening. Don't be too nervous. Despite saying this, her brow was tightly furrowed at this moment. Looking at these 2 light orbs that had appeared out of nowhere before her, her heart was somewhat unsettled. No way, could everything she had just seen not be hallucinations? Was it all real? Had this game really sent rewards into reality? But how did it manage that? Also, the notification just said the reward she received was some kind of rare candy gift box. If she remembered correctly, this type of item in the game could directly raise a Pokémon's level. But there couldn't possibly be such things in the real world, right? That sounded impossible. While she was thinking rapidly, these 2 red light orbs had already spread out. Countless meteor-like lights quickly dispersed in the air, leaving only 2 objects floating quietly in mid-air. On the left was a small blue gift box, while on the right was a golden yellow stone. Just before the 2 objects were about to hit the ground, Ayano instinctively rushed forward and caught them with both hands. Her gaze first fell on the deep blue gift box. She carefully reached out to open it and discovered that inside lay 5 deep blue candies. Her eyes couldn't help but widen dramatically. These candies looked exactly identical to those items called rare candy that she had obtained in the game. At the same time, Bellibolt beside her also moved closer, staring intently at those candies. Even though he didn't possess the powerful energy sensing ability like Cynthia's Garchomp, he was still deeply attracted by the energy contained within these candies. Not only that, the electrical energy contained in that golden stone beside the candies was even more incredibly impressive. Even from this distance, he could feel that current constantly pulling at his body, making him unconsciously want to move in that direction. The reason he had suddenly attacked those 2 light orbs earlier was because he sensed the powerful energy contained within them and thought they might threaten Iono. But when the light orbs dispersed and revealed their true forms, Bellibolt found it somewhat impossible to resist such temptation. Iono naturally noticed Bellibolt's eager appearance. After a brief hesitation, she ultimately closed the candy box again. Everything happening before her was simply too fantastical. How could rewards distributed by a game possibly be delivered to reality like this? These candies were completely of unknown origin, so naturally she didn't dare rashly let her Pokémon consume them. But that thunderstone beside them. Iono's gaze fell on that golden stone, from which brilliant electrical currents continuously burst forth. As someone who specialized in electric-type Pokémon, she naturally knew clearly how amazing the quality of this thunderstone was. It was such a premium specimen that she had never used or even seen anything like it in her entire life. At this moment, her throat couldn't help but move. The candies might be problematic, but this thunderstone surely there couldn't be anything wrong with it, right? Maybe she should try it.
Thanks for listening.